Hello there, and welcome to Why Human is Smart. Tonight, we lean into a question, one that stirs quietly beneath the surface of daily life, beneath the endless flow of memory and forgetting. It is a question older than history, older perhaps than the stones that stand in fields and deserts. Why does the human mind shine with such peculiar brightness? Why, among all the living creatures, does this fragile body carry such a strange fire of thought? Wherever you are, whether in daylight or darkness, resting on a bed, reclining in a chair, or listening with eyes already heavy, I hope you are comfortable, ready to drift with me. Together we can imagine the long trails of time, where silence lingers longer than any heartbeat. And if these wanderings feel gentle, if they bring calmness or curiosity, perhaps you might wish to stay close to this series, to subscribe, to walk more often along these quiet paths. Now, let us begin. The question itself arrives like a whisper. Why human, of all species, becomes the one who dreams in symbols, who paints caves, who builds cities that touch the sky? It is not answered here. It is not solved like a puzzle of logic. Instead, it hovers, like mist over a river, like starlight through thin clouds. To drift with it is to allow the mystery to remain, unresolved but deeply felt. Scientists sometimes describe intelligence as adaptation, as a way to solve problems across changing environments. The human lineage, fragile, upright, dependent on cooperation, may have needed thought more than claw or fang. Yet this explanation is only one stone in a vast field. When placed beside the quiet immensity of time, it feels partial, incomplete. What if there is more? Something subtler, something that cannot be measured in tools or survival alone. Imagine the first flicker of firelight on an ancient plain. Around it, shapes of early humans, eyes wide, shadows stretching. Fire itself is not thought, yet it may have invited thought, the way flames dance, never repeating, always flowing. Did fire teach the mind to watch patterns? Did the glow at night carve new space in the brain, a space for imagination? Or was the fire merely a mirror, showing what was already waiting in silence? The stones remember differently. Fossils hold. The shapes of earlier hominins, skulls slightly altered, brains slightly larger or smaller, jaws reshaped. Archaeologists uncover flint blades, bone awls, pigments mixed with ochre. These are quiet traces, almost whispers in the earth. They suggest minds learning to shape the world. But the deeper question remains. Why does one branch of the tree of life leap so far into abstraction? Why music? Why mathematics? Why dreams of stars? The night sky has always been above, endless, unmoving to the eye. For millions of years, creatures lived under it without naming constellations, without asking what lies beyond. And then, suddenly, in the thin stretch of human history, the stars become teachers, maps, calendars, stories. The sky is no different. But the mind that gazes is transformed. What changes in the quiet interior that turns points of light into meaning? Perhaps intelligence is not a thing possessed, but a rhythm, a resonance between body and world. Like wind through reeds, it arises from contact. The human hand touches stone, and the stone shapes the thought as much as the thought shapes the stone. The human ear hears birdsong, and rhythm enters memory, opening the possibility of music. Intelligence may not belong to humans alone. It may belong to the space between human and earth. Picture the ocean, rolling in endless silence. For aeons, it was there before words, before cities, before even the first bones of vertebrates. Its waves teach patience, its tides teach repetition, its currents teach connection. Did early humans, standing on shores, feel thought deepened by these lessons? Or is it only imagination now, placing cosmic meaning on what may have been simple. Survival. Fish to catch, salt to taste, shells to gather. Even so, the question persists. Why human? Other creatures are clever. Whales with songs, crows with tools, octopuses with trickery, elephants with memory. Each carries intelligence suited to its world. But something in humans extends beyond, reaching into futures unseen, weaving myths of gods, devising machines that fly, asking questions like this one. Is human smartness a difference in degree, or a leap into something else entirely? Imagine for a moment. Intelligence as a spark hidden deep in the fabric of life, waiting for the right vessel. Perhaps it is not that humans are special, but that the conditions aligned. Hands nimble enough, voices versatile enough, communities large enough, minds restless enough. The spark ignited here, but it could have ignited elsewhere, in another creature, on another planet. If so, then humanity's brightness is not destiny, but accident, an accident that glows across the dark. And if it is accident, does that make it less precious or more? The silence holds no answer. The stars gaze back without comment. The stones remain. The rivers flow. The forests whisper. Intelligence blooms briefly in the fragile frame of human life and then asks of itself, why? Why here? Why now? Why us? The question remains, like an ember at the center of the night. The glow of fire lingers in the mind. In the ancient dark, when predators watched from the shadows, when cold winds pressed against fragile skin, the sudden mastery of flame became more than warmth, more than safety. It became a mirror for thought itself. Around the fire, faces soften in light and shadow, and eyes begin to reflect the dance of sparks. A circle of bodies, a circle of minds, and at the center, a mystery burning. Archaeologists uncover blackened stones, ancient hearths from hundreds of thousands of years ago. In South Africa's Wonderwerk Cave, ash lies deep in the soil, telling us that humans tended fire long before history began. Yet, what the evidence does not tell is what fire meant. Did it gather the tribe closer, binding them in shared rhythm? Did it free hours of night once filled with fear, opening time for talk, for story, for thought? Perhaps intelligence did not awaken in daylight, but in these long nights, when flames became the first companions of the human mind. Fire gives light, but it also flickers. Never the same shape twice, always shifting, yet familiar. To gaze into. Fire is to learn patience, to hold attention, to recognize patterns hidden within motion. Could it be that minds trained by flame began to seek patterns elsewhere? In stars, in stones, in the movements of animals? Could it be that the hypnotic fire taught the brain to dream? Picture a child of that time, eyes wide, watching sparks rise into the black sky. The sparks scatter like stars. Does the child begin to wonder if the stars themselves are distant fires? In that moment, the link between flame and cosmos may have formed, a bridge of imagination crossing darkness. The spark of curiosity rising upward, outward, infinite, and yet fire is not only light, it is also danger. To keep it alive requires skill, feeding wood at the right moment, shielding flame from wind, protecting it from rain. Perhaps the very act of tending fire became practice for thought, discipline, foresight, cooperation. Intelligence is not only flashes of brilliance. It is persistence, the long endurance of care. Fire demanded this of humans. It made them watchful, patient, deliberate. Even now, in modern homes, fire still draws attention. A candle flame, a campfire, a hearth. People watch, without words, thoughts drifting. Something ancient stirs in this gaze. Perhaps the brain remembers its long apprenticeship in flame, when the heart of night was filled not with fear, but with glowing embers. Imagine yourself there. The forest presses close. Eyes of animals glint in the dark. But inside the circle of firelight there is warmth, safety, companionship. A soft hum of voices, the crackle of wood, the scent of smoke rising to the sky. In this small world of flame, the great world of thought begins to grow. Scientists sometimes suggest that cooking with fire changed everything. Cooked food releases more energy. It is easier to chew, easier to digest. More energy feeds the brain, and the brain grows. Intelligence may have begun not in symbols or speech, but in roasted roots, softened meat, the warmth of shared meals. Is it possible that humanity's genius began with appetite? That thought itself is nourished by the taste of flame? But perhaps there is more. Perhaps it is not only biology, not only nutrition. Perhaps fire gave humans a new relationship with time. Flames burn down, embers fade, wood turns to ash. To keep fire alive, one must think ahead, imagine the next hour, the next night. Is this where foresight was born? Not in the hunt, not in the chase, but in the quiet duty of keeping flame alive? The fire circle is a circle of meaning. Shadows move along stone walls. Sparks rise, then vanish. Around the flames, words may have first gathered, sounds shaping into symbols, breath into language. Did fire teach humans not only to cook, but to speak? Did it draw them closer, face to face, where voices could carry into the glow? In the silence of modern life, fire still whispers. The match struck, the stove lit, the candle flickering on a quiet table. Something within us softens, slows, remembers. Thought itself becomes flame-like, flickering, unpredictable, always moving. Perhaps intelligence is not like stone, solid and fixed, but like fire, fragile, temporary, alive only through care. And if that is true, then what does it mean for the future? Can the human flame be kept alive through the winds of time, through the storms of change? Or will it fade, as countless fires have faded before, leaving only ash and silence? The night stretches on, the fire burns low, and the question lingers. Why is human smart? Perhaps because humans are keepers of flame, outer flame in the circle of night, inner flame in the circle of the mind. The sparks drift upward, disappearing into the dark sky, and imagination follows. The sky opens above the fire, wide and endless. Long before words were carved into stone, long before stories were etched into memory, there was the canopy of stars. Silent, patient, scattered across the dark like grains of salt, like seeds cast into infinite fields. The human eye looks upward and something stirs. Curiosity, wonder, a question with no end. Could the sky itself be the first teacher? For countless other creatures, the stars are simply background, points of light that mark no path, ask no question. But for humans, the sky becomes a mirror. Constellations form, not in the heavens, but in the imagination. Hunters, serpents, birds, ships of light. The stars do not move to form these shapes. The mind reaches outward and draws connections. Is this the true sign of intelligence? The ability to weave meaning from what is silent? Scientists remind us that humans are not the only ones to navigate by the sky. Birds trace invisible routes across continents guided by constellations. Sea turtles cross oceans, sensing magnetic fields, sometimes steering by the moon. Yet humans go further. They not only follow the stars, they ask what the stars are. They measure them, name them, worship them, and wonder if minds beyond might also be watching. Imagine an early night, 10,000 years ago, on an open plain. The fire burns low. Silence deepens. A group lies back upon the earth, eyes turned, piercing upward. The Milky Way arcs across the dark, a river of light flowing without sound. Does someone ask aloud, "What is that?" Or perhaps no words are spoken, only the slow awakening of thought, the recognition that the sky is both outside and within. The stars keep rhythm. They rise and set, they mark the seasons. Crops are planted when a certain constellation returns. Journeys begin when the moon rises full. Human survival binds itself to celestial cycles. But beyond survival lies something more fragile, more mysterious, a sense of belonging. To gaze at the night sky is to feel small, yet connected, to imagine. That thought itself is part of a larger fabric. Could this be why human intelligence unfolds as it does, because it is not confined to Earth, but stretched across the heavens? A poet once described the stars as holes in the sky where light leaks through. To early minds, they might have been campfires of spirits, or eyes of ancestors, or gods looking back. Myths blossom from the same soil as science. Both are attempts to bridge the silence of the sky. Is this need to bridge, to connect, to give shape to the unknown, the essence of being smart? Consider the first astronomers, carving stone to align with solstice suns. At Stonehenge, at Nabta Playa, at Chichen Itza, ancient builders watched shadows fall with precision. These were not mere shelters or markers. They were calendars, instruments of sky. To lift stones so vast, to shape temples to light, is to declare, the cosmos matters. Human thought seeks not only food and safety, but harmony with stars. Why? What deep hunger drives the mind to measure the heavens? Imagine yourself under a night sky now. The city's lights fade, and darkness returns its depth. The stars seem endless, but they are finite. Suns scattered, some long dead, their light only now arriving. Does your mind stretch outward, tracing patterns, asking questions older than language? In that moment, you stand where ancient humans stood, eyes reflecting the same sky. Intelligence is not only within, it is in the gaze itself, in the act of looking up. The scientific detail is simple, almost cold. The sky is photons, ancient radiation, light years traveling. The poetic truth is something else. The sky is memory, a silent companion to every human who ever lived. Each star has been seen by countless eyes, yet always anew, always personal. Could this be why human intelligence thrives? Not because the stars demand it, but because the stars allow it? And what if the stars are not only watched, but watching? What if consciousness is not unique, but widespread, a pattern written across galaxies? In that case, the human gaze is both humble and vast, one spark among many, yet each spark unique. Intelligence becomes not an answer, but a conversation, stretching across light years. The night deepens. The fire burns low. Still the stars remain, silent, endless, waiting. The question lingers. Why does human thought reach so far? Perhaps because the sky has always been there, calling softly, without words, without end. Stone lies heavy beneath the sky. Stone waits, unchanging, while generations pass. Stone holds marks, scratches, lines, fractures, traces left by hands that are now dust. In stone, the first tools remain. Chipped edges, sharp enough to cut meat, to scrape hides, to crack bone. Simple forms, yet behind them lies a leap. The recognition that the world can be altered, reshaped, transformed by intention. Stone that remembers. Archaeologists find these fragments scattered across ancient riverbeds, in caves, buried deep in earth. Oldowan tools, perhaps 2.5 million years old, stand as testimony. A pebble struck against another, flakes removed with purpose. Not random, not accident, choice, repetition, memory. Was this the first whisper of human intelligence? The realization that the future can be prepared, that stone can serve as extension of hand and thought. To strike stone against stone is also to listen. Each crack carries information. The maker learns by sound, by vibration, by feel. Slowly, skill gathers. The mind begins to imagine the shape before it exists. In this act lies abstraction, seeing not only what is, but what could be. Perhaps the first imagination was not a dream or story, but a vision of a blade inside a rock. Yet stone is also stubborn. It resists. It breaks where one does not intend. Each failed flake is a lesson. Did frustration carve new pathways in the brain, teaching patience, strategy, persistence? Intelligence is shaped not only by success, but by failure repeated across centuries. Could it be that human thought is born not from triumphs, but from errors, accumulated like shards around an ancient hearth? Picture a small group on the savannah. They carry stones, each one altered slightly by human hands. They sit together, working in rhythm. The sound of flint striking flint echoes like distant thunder. Each blow teaches the next. Knowledge spreads, not through genes alone, but through culture, through demonstration, imitation, memory. Is this where human smartness becomes distinct? The ability to share thought across minds, to let stone remember what the body forgets? Stone remembers beyond the living. A carved tool survives the death of its maker. A mark in a cave remains when voices fade. In stone, memory becomes external, stretching across generations. Perhaps this is the beginning of history. Not words, but tools, marks, arrangements that carry meaning beyond one lifetime. Even today, stone holds memory. Megaliths stand aligned with stars. Tombs rise where leaders once lay. Walls remain where cities fell. Stone absorbs human thought, preserves it silently, outlasting flesh, outlasting wood, outlasting even the memory of why it was shaped. The earth itself becomes archive. Imagine holding one of these ancient tools. Small, sharp, heavy. Your hand closes around it, fitting as though it remembers the shape of its maker. In that moment, you hold not only stone, but time. You hold a thought from millions of years ago. Intelligence stretches through your palm. A whisper across aeons. Science tells us that the making of tools correlates with changes in the human brain. Enlargement of frontal lobes, regions tied to planning and foresight. But science cannot tell us how it felt. The pride, the patience, the small triumph of shaping the world with intention. The stone holds the trace, but the inner light of thought remains invisible. And what of stones yet undiscovered, buried deep, waiting silently? Could they belong to branches of humanity we do not know? Forgotten cousins whose sparks of intelligence flared, then vanished? The Silurian hypothesis wonders if evidence of an earlier civilization could survive in geology, erased by time. If stone is the best memory, how much has already been lost? The stone lies quiet. It waits in soil, in cave, in desert. It waits for hands to lift it, for eyes to recognize the echo of thought. Intelligence is fleeting, but stone remembers. And the question lingers. Does human cleverness rest on the permanence of memory or on the fragile act of forgetting? The stone says nothing. It simply endures. Water flows where stone stands still. Rivers carve valleys, seas shift shorelines, rain softens soil. In the rhythm of water, the human mind has always found a mirror, flowing, circling, returning, never the same, yet always familiar. Perhaps intelligence, too, is a river, shaped not by fixed boundaries but by movement, by endless change. Imagine an early camp set beside a river. The people drink, wash, watch fish flash beneath the surface. The current carries branches, leaves, stones smoothed by time. To watch a river is to watch the passage of days, to sense continuity beyond the moment. Does the flow teach patience? Does it teach that the world is not static, but in motion, always becoming something else? Science tells us that rivers guided migration. Water sources dictated survival, and ancient routes often followed their curves. Communities settled near lakes and seas. The first cities rose where rivers met fertile plains: the Nile, the Tigris, the Ganges, the Yellow River. Human thought grew beside water, fed by its abundance, shaped by its restlessness. Could it be that minds themselves are streams, carrying ideas the way rivers carry silt? Water also reflects. In its surface, humans first saw themselves. The earliest mirror was not polished glass but a quiet pond, a calm pool. To see one's own face is to recognize identity, to glimpse the boundary between self and other. Did this reflection awaken self-awareness, the seed of thought that asks, "Who am I?" and water speaks. The sound of waves, the trickle of streams, the sudden rush of flood, each tells of movement, of change. To hear water is to hear rhythm. Perhaps rhythm itself, later shaping music and language, is rooted in the ear's long listening to flowing streams. Could the lull of water at night be the origin of lullabies, the soft cadence of comfort? Picture the ocean's tide rising and falling. To ancient observers, the pattern is endless, bound to the pull of the moon. Time itself becomes visible in water's cycle, a calendar written in waves. Human thought learns to count, to measure, to predict. Water teaches the possibility of future, the certainty of return. But water also destroys. Floods wash away villages, storms sweep the coast, rivers change course overnight. Intelligence grows in response to danger, to loss, to the need for resilience. Perhaps human thought is sharpened by the unpredictability of water as much as by its constancy. Even now, humans are drawn to water. Cities cluster on coasts. People walk along riversides for comfort. The sight of flowing water calms, even in artificial fountains, even in recorded sound. Something deep remembers. Perhaps intelligence is not only shaped by practical need, but by beauty, the way ripples catch the light, the way waves reflect the sky. Science studies water as chemistry. H2O, molecule of life. Yet in culture, water becomes symbol, purity, renewal, passage, dream. Baptism, pilgrimage, ritual cleansing all suggest that water carries not only bodies but meaning. Did human intelligence deepen because it sought not only survival in water but also metaphor, story, and symbol? Imagine standing at the edge of an ancient river. The current pulls past, carrying fragments of leaves, of earth, of time itself. Your reflection trembles in its surface. You watch and you understand something wordless, that life moves, that everything passes, that you, too, are part of the flow. The question remains, is human smartness a river of thought, fed by countless streams, biology, survival, ritual, beauty, or is it only accident, shaped by geography, by chance, by the path of water through rock? The river answers with silence. It flows on, carrying memory beyond reach, dissolving questions into current. Stone remembers. Water moves, and the human mind drifts between them, searching for meaning. Bones rest in earth long after voices fade. In their curves and hollows, in their marrow turned to stone, they carry traces of lives once lived. Fossils whisper of creatures whose eyes never saw fire, whose ears never heard words. The human story is written in these remains, skulls expanding, jaws reshaping, foreheads rising. The language of bones is slow, deliberate, etched across millions of years. Paleoanthropologists study these fragments with quiet care. From a tooth, a piece of jaw, a femur, they reconstruct entire worlds. Australopithecus, Homo habilis, Homo erectus. Names assigned like verses in a long poem of evolution. Each bone tells not only of survival, but of thought beginning to take form. Did the widening of the pelvis to birth larger brains mark a new threshold? Did the reshaping of the throat allow voices to rise into language? The answers lie silent in bone. Imagine holding a skull that is not yet human, not quite animal. Heavy brow ridges, but larger brain case. The eye sockets wide, the teeth worn. You cradle it as one might cradle a vessel of time. Within it's hollow. Space once lived thoughts, feelings, moments of recognition. Were they so different from our own? Did they wonder, as we do, at the flow of rivers, at the rise of stars? Bones are language without words. They tell of diets, of injuries healed, of hands that worked tools, of bodies that walked long distances. Some show cut marks, evidence of ritual or survival. Others show arthritis, disease, the weight of living. In bones, the mind sees the continuity of struggle, the persistence of life across deep time. Perhaps intelligence is not a sudden spark, but a long accumulation, a layering of memory into flesh, then into stone. And bones are also instruments. Early humans tapped antlers against rock, carved whistles from bird bones, made beads from teeth. The body becomes both tool and symbol, matter transformed into meaning. Was this the beginning of art? The recognition that even death can be shaped into story? That bones can sing after life has gone? Consider burial. Some of the earliest graves show bodies placed carefully, sometimes with red ochre, sometimes with flowers, sometimes with goods. This suggests not only grief, but imagination, the thought that the one who has died goes somewhere, or lingers somehow. To bury with care is to speak a language of bones, to acknowledge that life extends beyond what is seen. Did this act deepen intelligence, binding memory with mystery? Picture a cave, deep and silent. Bones lie in the dust, arranged not by chance but by hands. The flicker of a torch reveals them, symbols of loss, perhaps of reverence. You stand there, imagining the people who placed them, their thoughts, their feelings. Do you sense in your chest the same ache, the same wonder? Across tens of thousands of years, the gesture remains the same. Science measures bones in centimeters, in radiocarbon years. But in the quiet of imagination, they carry more. Whispers of laughter, footsteps, voices lost. The empty sockets of eyes once saw horizons, once watched children play, once stared into fire. In these bones is the continuity of humanity, the bridge between body and thought. Perhaps intelligence is not only in the living brain, but in the recognition of mortality. To know that bones remain when breath is gone, to sense that memory must be carried, preserved, passed on. The language of bones speaks this truth without words, and yet bones are fragile. They break, they erode, they vanish in soil, dissolve in water, are lost to fire. How much has already been erased? How many species unknown? How many experiments in intelligence gone, leaving no trace? The silence of missing bones is as telling as the ones we find. The question lingers. Why does human smartness stretch so far when so much of life is forgotten? Do bones remind us of our own impermanence, pushing thought to seek permanence elsewhere? In story, in stone, in sky? The bones remain silent. But the silence itself speaks. The ocean lies vast, without edges. It has always been there, older than mountains, older than forests, older even than bones turned to stone. Its depths remain mysterious, its rhythms endless. To stand before the sea is to feel the smallness of human life, and yet also its connection to something greater. Perhaps intelligence itself was shaped at the ocean's edge, by the meeting of land and water, by horizons that promise distance and return. Scientists trace the origin of life to the sea. Within warm shallows, molecules gathered, membranes formed, cells divided. Every creature, even humans, carries salt in the blood, echoes of the first ocean. When humans walk upon the shore, they return to a place of memory deeper than consciousness. Does the ocean awaken something ancient in the mind? A recognition of home too vast to name? For early humans, the sea was both gift and danger. Its tides brought fish, shellfish, seaweed. Storms took lives, ships, villages. The ocean could nourish or destroy, indifferent to human need. Intelligence grew in this tension, balancing curiosity with caution. To survive near the sea was to learn rhythm, to watch tides, to predict the storms, to read the language of waves. Perhaps the mind learned patience from the sea, as it learned permanence from stone and movement from rivers. Imagine standing on a prehistoric shore. The sun sets, casting red across endless water. A small group gathers at the edge, their feet sinking into wet sand. They see the horizon, a line dividing earth and sky. Does one of them wonder what lies beyond? Perhaps intelligence begins here, not in tools or fire, but in the restless question, what is on the other side? Archaeologists find shells carried, far inland, beads worn as ornaments, pigments ground from ocean minerals. The sea was not only sustenance, but symbol. It entered human imagination as beauty, as power, as mystery. To wear the ocean upon the body is to claim connection to something vast, something beyond the immediate. Intelligence seeks not only to live, but to belong. Even today, oceans pull human thought outward. Great journeys begin at ports. Stories unfold upon waves. Poets describe the sea as eternity, as dream, as mirror of the soul. The scientific truth is equally vast. 71% of Earth covered by water, most of it unexplored, dark, unmeasured. We know more about distant planets than about the deepest trenches of our own seas. Does this not suggest that intelligence always leaves mysteries unsolved, horizons unpassed? The ocean moves without end. Tides rise and fall under the moon's pull. Currents circle, carrying heat, shaping climate, connecting continents. Human survival depends upon this hidden system, though it lies mostly unseen. Intelligence grows not only from what is visible, but from what must be imagined. To predict tides, to map currents, to trust that unseen forces shape the world. This is thought, this is foresight, this is science. Picture yourself at night, listening to waves. Each one is the same, and yet no two are alike. They arrive, they recede, they arrive again. The rhythm lulls, but also awakens. You sense the passage of time, the measure of eternity. Perhaps the human mind, hearing this rhythm for millennia, learned to shape its own patterns. Heartbeat, breath, song, story. Could it be that thought itself is an echo of waves? The ocean reminds humans of their limits. No matter how far they wade, the horizon recedes. No matter how many ships set sail, danger always lurks in storms. Intelligence grows from limits as much as from freedoms. To know what cannot be crossed, to respect what cannot be known, is its own kind of wisdom. And yet, the question lingers. Is human smartness a gift of the ocean, a response to its immensity, its unpredictability, its mystery? Or is the sea only mirror, reflecting what was already within? The waves do not answer. They continue their rhythm, indifferent, eternal. The ocean remains, vast and silent, and the human mind, small and restless, continues to wonder. Bones rest in earth long after voices fade. In their curves and hollows, in their marrow turned to stone, they carry traces of lives once lived. Fossils whisper of creatures whose eyes never saw fire, whose ears never heard words. The human story is written in these remains, skulls expanding, jaws reshaping, foreheads rising. The language of bones is slow, deliberate, etched across millions of years. Paleoanthropologists study these fragments with quiet care. From a tooth, a piece of jaw, a femur, they reconstruct entire worlds. Australopithecus, Homo habilis, Homo erectus. Names assigned like verses in a long poem of evolution. Each bone tells not only of survival, but of thought beginning to take form. Did the widening of the pelvis to birth larger brains mark a new threshold? Did the reshaping of the throat allow voices to rise into language? The answers lie silent in bone. Imagine holding a skull that is not yet human, not quite animal. Heavy brow ridges, but larger brain case. The eye sockets wide, the teeth worn. You cradle it as one might cradle a vessel of time. Within its hollow, space once lived thoughts, feelings, moments of recognition. Were they so different from our own? Did they wonder, as we do, at the flow of rivers, at the rise of stars? Bones are language without words. They tell of diets, of injuries healed, of hands that worked tools, of bodies that walked long distances. Some show cut marks, evidence of ritual or survival. Others show arthritis, disease, the weight of living. In bones, the mind sees the continuity of struggle, the persistence of life across deep time. Perhaps intelligence is not a sudden spark, but a long accumulation, a layering of memory into flesh, then into stone. And bones are also instruments. Early humans tapped antlers against rock, carved whistles from bird bones, made beads from teeth. The body becomes both tool and symbol, matter transformed into meaning. Was this the beginning of art? The recognition that even death can be shaped into story? That bones can sing after life has gone? Consider burial. Some of the earliest graves show bodies placed carefully, sometimes with red ochre, sometimes with flowers, sometimes with goods. This suggests not only grief, but imagination, the thought that the one who has died goes somewhere, or lingers somehow. To bury with care is to speak a language of bones, to acknowledge that life extends beyond what is seen. Did this act deepen intelligence, binding memory with mystery? Picture a cave, deep and silent. Bones lie in the dust, arranged not by chance but by hands. The flicker of a torch reveals them, symbols of loss, perhaps of reverence. You stand there, imagining the people who placed them, their thoughts, their feelings. Do you sense in your chest the same ache, the same wonder? Across tens of thousands of years, the gesture remains the same. Science measures bones in centimeters, in radiocarbon years. But in the quiet of imagination, they carry more. Whispers of laughter, footsteps, voices lost. The empty sockets of eyes once saw horizons, once watched children play, once stared into fire. In these bones is the continuity of humanity, the bridge between body and thought. Perhaps intelligence is not only in the living brain, but in the recognition of mortality. To know that bones remain when breath is gone, to sense that memory must be carried, preserved, passed on. The language of bones speaks this truth without words, and yet bones are fragile. They break, they erode, they vanish in soil, dissolve in water, are lost to fire. How much has already been erased? How many species unknown? How many experiments in intelligence gone, leaving no trace? The silence of missing bones is as telling as the ones we find. The question lingers. Why does human smartness stretch so far when so much of life is forgotten? Do bones remind us of our own impermanence, pushing thought to seek permanence elsewhere? In story, in stone, in sky? The bones remain silent. But the silence itself speaks. The ocean lies vast, without edges. It has always been there, older than mountains, older than forests, older even than bones turned to stone. Its depths remain mysterious, its rhythms endless. To stand before the sea is to feel the smallness of human life, and yet also its connection to something greater. Perhaps intelligence itself was shaped at the ocean's edge, by the meeting of land and water, by horizons that promise distance and return. Scientists trace the origin of life to the sea. Within warm shallows, molecules gathered, membranes formed, cells divided. Every creature, even humans, carries salt in the blood, echoes of the first ocean. When humans walk upon the shore, they return to a place of memory deeper than consciousness. Does the ocean awaken something ancient in the mind? A recognition of home too vast to name? For early humans, the sea was both gift and danger. Its tides brought fish, shellfish, seaweed, storms took lives, ships, villages. The ocean could nourish or destroy, indifferent to human need. Intelligence grew in this tension, balancing curiosity with caution. To survive near the sea was to learn rhythm, to watch tides, to predict storms, to read the language of waves. Perhaps the mind learned patience from the sea, as it learned permanence from stone and movement from rivers. Imagine standing on a prehistoric shore. The sun sets, casting red across endless water. A small group gathers at the edge, their feet sinking into wet sand. They see the horizon, a line dividing earth and sky. Does one of them wonder what lies beyond? Perhaps intelligence begins here, not in tools or fire, but in the restless question, what is on the other side? Archaeologists find shells carried, far inland, beads worn as ornaments, pigments ground from ocean minerals. The sea was not only sustenance, but symbol. It entered human imagination as beauty, as power, as mystery. To wear the ocean upon the body is to claim connection to something vast, something beyond the immediate. Intelligence seeks not only to live, but to belong. Even today, oceans pull human thought outward. Great journeys begin at ports. Stories unfold upon waves. Poets describe the sea as eternity, as dream, as mirror of the soul. The scientific truth is equally vast. 71% of Earth covered by water, most of it unexplored, dark, unmeasured. We know more about distant planets than about the deepest trenches of our own seas. Does this not suggest that intelligence always leaves mysteries unsolved, horizons unpassed? The ocean moves without end. Tides rise and fall under the moon's pull. Currents circle, carrying heat, shaping climate, connecting continents. Human survival depends upon this hidden system, though it lies mostly unseen. Intelligence grows not only from what is visible, but from what must be imagined. To predict tides, to map currents, to trust that unseen forces shape the world. This is thought, this is foresight, this is science. Picture yourself at night, listening to waves. Each one is the same, and yet no two are alike. They arrive, they recede, they arrive again. The rhythm lulls, but also awakens. You sense the passage of time, the measure of eternity. Perhaps the human mind, hearing this rhythm for millennia, learned to shape its own patterns. Heartbeat, breath, song, story. Could it be that thought itself is an echo of waves? The ocean reminds humans of their limits. No matter how far they wade, the horizon recedes. No matter how many ships set sail, danger always lurks in storms. Intelligence grows from limits as much as from freedoms. To know what cannot be crossed, to respect what cannot be known, is its own kind of wisdom. And yet, the question lingers. Is human smartness a gift of the ocean, a response to its immensity, its unpredictability, its mystery? Or is the sea only mirror, reflecting what was already within? The waves do not answer. They continue their rhythm, indifferent, eternal. The ocean remains, vast and silent, and the human mind, small and restless, continues to wonder. The forest gathers in shadows. Branches weave into ceilings, roots press into earth, leaves scatter light into shifting patterns. Within this green labyrinth, early humans once moved with caution. The forest is rich with fruit, wood, shelter, and yet it is also a place of watching eyes, of predators hidden in silence. Here, in the shadows of the forest, the mind sharpens. Awareness stretches beyond the body. Intelligence awakens in the practice of listening, in the art of noticing what cannot be seen. Primatologists speak of the forest as the ancestral home. For millions of years, hominins lived among branches, grasping, climbing, watching. Even today, our hands remember trees, curved fingers, opposable thumbs, palms that once wrapped around bark. Our vision, too, is shaped by forest light. Forward-facing, eyes, depth perception, color sensitivity for ripe fruit among leaves. Could it be that intelligence began not in open plains, but beneath canopies, in the constant need to distinguish sound from silence, shadow from shape? Picture the hush before a predator moves. The leaves hold still, the air thickens, a faint crack echoes far away. To survive, one must imagine possibilities. Is it wind, or leopard, or nothing at all? Intelligence grows in this gap between sound and meaning, in the skill of interpreting what is not obvious. The forest demands imagination, and so the mind learns to anticipate. And the forest is not only danger, it is abundance, branches heavy with fruit, vines offering water, mushrooms emerging after rain. To forage well requires memory. Which tree bore fruit last season? Which root heals? Which leaf poisons? In such memory lies the foundation of knowledge. Perhaps human smartness began as a forest library, carried not in books but in living minds. Imagine yourself in that ancient green world. The air is damp. Birds call unseen. Light filters down in shafts, illuminating patches of moss and fern. Each sound, each movement, each scent becomes information. To walk in the forest is to read a constant flow of signs. Intelligence, here, is attention. Even now, humans are drawn to forests. Parks soothe, paths among trees calm restless thought. Neuroscience notes lower stress, slower heart rates, a sense of renewal. Perhaps the brain remembers its long apprenticeship among shadows. Perhaps intelligence is not only about problem-solving, but about attunement, the quiet noticing of subtle details, the harmony of awareness with environment. The forest also holds echoes of culture. Many myths place origins among trees. Sacred, groves, world trees, forests as thresholds between realms. In story, as in memory, the forest is teacher. Could it be that myths themselves are memories of intelligence awakening in green shadows? Science marks another truth. Forests shape climate, release oxygen, sustain diversity. To live within them is to depend on countless unseen relationships. Fungi beneath roots, insects in leaves, birds scattering seeds. To perceive such interconnection may have nurtured human thought, the recognition that everything is linked, that survival is never solitary. Intelligence, then, is not only awareness of self, but awareness of network, of hidden webs. But what of those moments when silence falls? Heavy? The hush before a storm, the sudden absence of birdsong. In that pause, early humans may have felt both fear and wonder, the possibility of danger, the mystery of stillness. Perhaps it is this tension between fear and curiosity that sculpted human thought most deeply. The forest does not answer. It simply continues, growing, decaying, renewing. Its shadows conceal, its branches reveal. Intelligence blooms in its silence. The question lingers: did the forest give humanity not only food and shelter, but also the habit of imagination? The need to see more than is visible, to expect more than is present? In the dark canopy, unseen eyes still watch, and the mind, restless, learns to watch back. The predator waits in silence. Teeth glint in the dark, claws press into soil, eyes catch the smallest flicker of movement. For early humans, the world was full of watching hunters: lions, leopards, hyenas, snakes. To live meant to notice, to anticipate, to imagine what lurks unseen. In this endless dance between hunted and hunter, the architecture of intelligence may have been shaped. Fear itself becomes a teacher. Neuroscientists speak of the amygdala, deep in the brain, ancient and alert. It responds to threat with speed, sharpening senses, flooding the body with urgency. Yet fear does more than protect. It trains memory, embeds lessons, encourages strategy. To survive predators is not only to run or fight, but to remember where danger hides, to imagine where it might appear again. Could it be that human thought, pattern-seeking, anticipatory, restless, was sculpted by the long shadow of predators? Picture the savannah at dusk. A small group gathers near the fire. Beyond the glow, darkness thickens. Every rustle in the grass becomes a question. Is it wind or something watching? A child stirs. A hunter grips a spear, ears stretch into the silence. Intelligence grows here, in this tension between certainty and uncertainty, between what is known and what is only guessed. Other animals also live under threat. Gazelles leap, birds scatter, monkeys call alarms. But humans take the fear further. They shape it into stories, warnings, myths. The lion becomes not only danger, but symbol of power. The serpent becomes not only threat, but emblem of wisdom. Fear is transformed into meaning. Perhaps intelligence is this very transformation, the weaving of danger into memory, memory into imagination, imagination into story. Archaeological sites reveal bones of hominins with puncture marks, skulls cracked by predator jaws. Evidence of lives lost, yet also of survival. Groups grew larger, cooperation deepened, weapons sharpened. Fear of predators may have bound communities together, forcing minds to share vigilance. Could it be that intelligence is collective before it is individual? That it blooms in the space between many eyes watching for danger? Imagine yourself in that ancient night. The fire fades low. The darkness presses closer. You hear a sound, soft, deliberate, just beyond sight. Your body tenses, your breath stills. In that instant, your mind leaps ahead, imagining futures, attack, escape, survival. Fear gives birth to foresight. Foresight gives birth to thought. Even today, humans carry echoes of this training. A sudden noise in the night, a shadow across a deserted street. The body reacts before the mind decides. Intelligence is sharpened, not in comfort, but in vigilance. Perhaps the very ability to worry, to anticipate problems before they arrive, is the inheritance of countless generations living under predator eyes. Science calls this hypervigilance. Philosophy might call it awareness. Poetry might call it the shadow of the world. Whatever the name, it is part of what it means to be human, to see not only what is present, but what might be. And yet, predators are not only enemies. They also shape balance, maintain ecosystems, ensure diversity. To fear them is to respect them, to recognize one's place within a larger web. Intelligence is not born in isolation. It is born in relation, in the dialogue between hunter and hunted, between fear and survival. The question lingers: if humans had lived without predators, without fear, would intelligence have risen as it did? Or is smartness itself the echo of ancient roars, of eyes glowing in darkness, of silence broken by sudden strike? The night does not answer. The predators still watch, and the human mind, restless, continues to imagine. Hands reach before words are spoken. They grasp, they shape, they comfort, they strike. Long before the tongue carried meaning, the hand was already speaking, a language of touch, of gesture, of creation. In the hand lies a story of intelligence, as old as stone, as subtle as silence. Perhaps the true spark is not found in words at all, but in the movements of fingers, palms, and touch. Anatomists note the peculiarities of the human hand: opposable thumbs, fine motor control, sensitive skin. These are not small details. They are revolutions of form. With such hands, early humans could weave fibers, crack nuts, knap stone, carry fire. Each motion demanded thought. Each success expanded possibility. Could it be that the hand trained the mind as much as the mind trained the hand? Picture a toolmaker on an ancient plain. Stone rests in one palm, another stone strikes it. A shard falls, sharp-edged, useful. The motion repeats again and again until intention becomes skill. The hand teaches patience, precision, rhythm. Intelligence grows not only in the brain, but in the body, in the feedback between skin and stone, between motion and result. Hands also connect lives. A parent steadies a child. A hunter signals to the group. A friend offers food. These are not words, yet they carry meaning. Perhaps even more ancient than speech. Anthropologists observe how primates gesture, how apes use touch to reassure, to warn, to invite. Humans carry this inheritance forward. Could the foundation of language lie not in voice, but in hands extended toward another? Imagine the first, stories told not through sound, but gesture. A hand tracing the shape of an animal in air, a palm sweeping across the sky to mark the flight of birds, a finger pointing toward danger in the grass. Intelligence speaks through the body, silently, before words find their place. Even in silence, the hand creates. Caves filled with red and black prints, palms pressed against stone. Tens of thousands of years later, they remain. Signatures without, words, declarations of presence. I was here. The hand leaves memory for the future. Is this not the essence of intelligence? The desire to be remembered, to mark existence upon the world? Science tells us that neural pathways for hand coordination are linked to those for language. To move fingers with precision may have opened the way for shaping sounds, for structuring grammar. If so, then hands are the ancestors of words, and every poem begins in motion, every philosophy in gesture. Consider your own hand now, the way it opens, closes, flexes, rests, the way it can hold, write, build, soothe. In this simple form lies the history of human thought. Every invention, every tool, every symbol, once held, once shaped, once carried by hands. Intelligence is not abstract. It is tactile, embodied, rooted in touch. But what if words had never come? Would hands alone have carried intelligence forward? Could humans have built civilizations in silence, shaping meaning only through gesture, through touch, through the visible movement of thought? Perhaps language is only one path, and the hand was already sufficient. The hand remembers. It speaks without sound, and the mind follows its motion into meaning. the question lingers. Is human smartness born not in the voice of reason, but in the quiet, tireless work of the hand? The hands remain open and waiting, silent teachers, eternal companions. The sky is wide, and beneath it humans move. Feet press into dust, step after step, carrying bodies far from the places of birth. For hundreds of thousands of years, humans are wanderers, across savannas, through forests, over mountains, along coasts. Migration is not only survival, it is a shaping of thought. To travel is to imagine what lies beyond the horizon. Intelligence grows in the act of leaving. Archaeologists trace these paths with fragments, stone tools scattered along valleys, footprints hardened in volcanic ash, bones resting in caves. From Africa outward, humans spread into Asia, Europe, the Pacific, the Americas. Each step requires adaptation, to cold, to drought, to new foods, to unfamiliar dangers. Could it be that human smartness is not rooted in one place, but in the restlessness of movement? Imagine a small band crossing a plain. Behind them, the land grows dry. Ahead, clouds gather, suggesting rain. They carry little: tools, fire, memory. The horizon calls, both uncertain and promising. To walk toward it requires imagination, a vision of a place not yet seen, a hope of water, of shelter, of survival. Thought stretches into distance, just as the body does. Migration is a teacher of memory. Paths must be recalled, landmarks recognized, routes shared with children. A bend in the river, a mountain shaped like a tooth, a tree split by lightning. Each becomes a sign. To carry such knowledge across miles is to build mental maps, to imagine terrain before arriving. The mind becomes cartographer long before maps are drawn, and migration teaches cooperation. No one survives alone on such journeys. Food must be shared, dangers faced together, choices made as a group. Conflict threatens survival. Trust ensures it. Perhaps intelligence grows not only from problem-solving, but from the art of moving. Together, aligning steps, aligning minds. Even today, traces of this legacy remain. Humans feel the pull of travel, the urge to explore, the curiosity for distant lands. Airplanes cross oceans, spacecraft leave Earth, yet the impulse is the same as in ancient days, to see what lies beyond. Is this wanderlust a remnant of necessity, or a deeper law of intelligence? That to think is always to move forward? Science suggests that migration shaped genetics, blending populations, spreading adaptations. Skin tones shifted, body forms changed, immune systems adjusted. But migration also shaped culture. New environments inspired new myths, new stories, new symbols. Rivers became gods, mountains became ancestors, skies became calendars. Movement writes diversity into thought. Could it be that the variety of human intelligence is born from the variety of landscapes walked? Picture standing at the edge of a great sea, waves breaking endlessly. Behind you lies a continent already known. Ahead lies water, unknown, perhaps endless. Some turn back. Others build rafts, trusting the currents, trusting their own courage. To step into the uncertain is to gamble with survival, but also to expand imagination. Intelligence leaps where fear hesitates, and migration is not only outward, it is also inward. Journeys carve paths in memory, shape inner landscapes of longing, belonging, and exile. To leave is to remember. To arrive is to imagine. To wander is to ask, where is home? Perhaps intelligence is bound to this question, forever unsettled, forever seeking. The horizon remains. It calls without words. And the human mind answers with footsteps. The question lingers. Is human smartness the gift of movement, the endless, walking toward unknowns, the refusal to remain still? The land waits. The sky opens. The journey continues. The moon rises over the horizon, pale and constant. It waxes, it wanes, it disappears, it returns. Across cultures, across ages, it has been measured, worshipped, counted, feared. To gaze upon the moon is to look not only outward, but inward. For as long as humans have watched the night, the moon has been a companion, a clock, a riddle. Intelligence may have grown in its presence, in the steady rhythm of its light. Astronomers trace lunar cycles to early calendars, marks carved into bones 30,000 years ago, lines and notches that seem to track the phases of the moon, women's cycles, planting cycles, hunting cycles, all mirrored in its waxing and waning. Could it be that the first mathematics was not numbers but moons, not calculation but rhythm? Imagine an ancient gathering at night. The moon hangs full, casting silver over plains, forests, seas. Shadows stretch long, predators retreat. For a few nights, the darkness is less heavy. The group moves further, hunts later, tells longer stories. Then the moon fades and the nights grow deep again. Such cycles shape memory, habit, anticipation. Thought learns to measure not just the present moment, but the future return. The moon is not only clock, it is mirror. Its face shows craters, scars, patterns that invite imagination. Rabbits, women, hunters, faces, all seen in its shapes. The mind projects meaning where none exists. Perhaps this is the essence of human thought, to take what is silent and create story, to find companionship in a sphere of rock. Science explains the moon's pull, the tides rising and falling, oceans breathing in rhythm with its orbit. But for early humans, the tide itself must have been mystery. Why does the sea swell when the moon rises? Why does it recede? To link sky and ocean is a leap of thought, an unseen connection imagined, then trusted. Intelligence grows in such leaps, connecting the distant and the near, the visible and the invisible. Even today, the moon carries power. Poets write of it, lovers meet under it, scientists measure its dust. Astronauts walked upon its surface, leaving footprints that may remain for millions of years. The same moon seen by cave painters now holds human machines. In this continuity lies a strange wonder. Intelligence has stretched far enough to leave Earth, yet still looks upward at the same companion. Picture yourself standing under a crescent moon, the air cool, the sky wide. You trace its arc in your mind, remembering that it will wax again, that it will vanish and return. You feel the tug of its cycle, the quiet rhythm it imposes on time. In this act of noticing, of measuring, you share thought with ancestors who watched the same light thousands of years ago. And perhaps intelligence is precisely this sharing, a chain of eyes gazing upward, a continuity of wonder carried across generations. The moon does not change, but the mind does. Each age sees it differently. God, clock, satellite, neighbor. Could this shifting perception itself be the mark of intelligence, the ability to let meaning evolve while the object remains the same? The moon waits in silence. It measures without speaking. It reflects without judgment. The question lingers. Is human smartness born in this act of measuring the sky, of weaving cycles into memory, of turning the face of the moon into a mirror of thought? The moon drifts on, and the human mind follows. The fire burns low, and people gather close. Voices rise, weaving sound into meaning, meaning into story. Around the circle of light, faces glow, eyes widen, hands gesture. The hunt is remembered, the danger retold, the mystery shaped into words. Perhaps here, in these firelit circles, human intelligence takes on its most unique form. For storytelling is more than memory. It is invention, imagination, the weaving of time into pattern. Anthropologists speak of myth as the glue of community. Stories bind individuals into groups, groups into cultures. Through story, the past is remembered, the present explained, the future imagined. To tell a story is to step beyond the immediate, to rehearse possibilities, to embody knowledge in rhythm and symbol. Could it be that storytelling itself is the first true invention, the one that gives birth to all others? Picture a tale spoken in ancient night. A hunter mimics the leap of prey, the chase, the triumph. Others laugh, shiver, nod. Children listen, their eyes wide, their minds shaping images from words. In that moment, memory becomes shared, knowledge becomes teaching, imagination becomes survival. Story extends intelligence beyond the single mind. Even the earliest art seems bound to story. Animals painted on cave walls, hands traced in pigment, spirals and dots. Were they mere decoration or illustrations of tales told in darkness? Perhaps. Each painting is a chapter, each mark a reminder. In the silence of caves, the walls themselves may have spoken, echoing with story long since vanished. Science reminds us that language evolved gradually. Sounds into symbols, symbols into grammar, grammar into endless possibility. But language without story is like fire without flame, heat without light. Story gives meaning to words, structure to thought, connection to memory. Perhaps human smartness is not in vocabulary or grammar, but in narrative, in the ability to link events into cause, to thread life into meaning. Stories also shape the unseen. Spirits, gods, ancestors, dreams, all are given voice through narrative. To tell a story is to step into the invisible, to imagine what cannot be proven. Intelligence grows here, at the boundary of fact and dream, where imagination fills the gaps of knowledge. Even today, stories remain at the heart of human life. Novels, films, songs, myths, histories, all weave thought into rhythm. Science itself is a form of story, explaining the world in careful sequence, cause and effect. Philosophy, too, is narrative, unfolding questions across time. Perhaps all of human thought is, at its root, storytelling, the mind forever spinning tales to make sense of the silence. Imagine yourself around that ancient fire. You listen as someone tells of the great hunt, or of a spirit in the forest, or of a dream seen under the full moon. You feel the pull of the tale, the way it shapes time, makes the moment larger than itself. In your mind, pictures form, wolves running, trees whispering, ancestors watching. Intelligence is not only in the teller, but in the listener. It is shared, multiplied, woven between voices. The fire flickers. Shadows shift along faces and stone. The story ends, but its echo remains, carried into memory, ready to be told again. In this repetition lies continuity, tradition, culture. Story ensures that knowledge does not vanish with death. It travels forward, like sparks rising into the night. The question lingers. Is human smartness born not in tools or fire alone, but in this act of telling, of weaving silence into meaning, of shaping experience into story? The fire circle glows, the voices fade, and the stars listen. The warmth of fire fades and winter presses in. Cold sharpens the air. Ice creeps across rivers, snow gathers on stone. For early humans, the coming of ice was not a season, but an age. Vast stretches of time when glaciers carved valleys and the earth itself seemed frozen in silence. To live in such ages demanded more than strength. It demanded foresight, memory, imagination. Intelligence sharpened in the silence of ice. Paleoclimatologists describe these ages in layers of sediment, in trapped bubbles of ancient air, in moraines of stone carried by glaciers. The record shows cycles. Warmth and cold, advance and retreat. Life adapts or it disappears. For humans, survival through cold required new strategies: clothing of hides, shelters of bone and stone, the storing of food, the building of fire against relentless wind. Could it be that the deep chill of earth sculpted the warmth of thought? Picture a small group huddled in a cave. Outside, snow falls endlessly. Inside, a fire glows faintly, the smoke curling toward cracks in the stone. They wrap themselves in furs, share dried meat, tell stories to pass the endless night. Each day is survival, but also invention. New tools, new ways of hunting, new ways of keeping warm. Intelligence is tested by cold, refined by necessity. Ys does not forgive carelessness. A forgotten fire, a lost tool, a misjudged journey, these could mean death. Perhaps the precision of human thought, the careful planning of future days, arose here, in the long winters of prehistory. In warmth, mistakes may be forgotten. In cold, mistakes are remembered. Does intelligence grow sharper where life is most fragile? The ice also changes landscapes. Forests retreat, grasslands spread, rivers shift, animals migrate. Humans must follow or perish. Migration into new lands, Europe, Siberia, the Americas, was shaped by cold. The ice forced feet to move, minds to adapt, cultures to evolve. Intelligence is restless not by choice but by climate. Even today, humans remember ice. Myths tell of great floods, of frozen worlds, of rebirth after cold. In Norse tales, the cosmos begins in the meeting of fire and ice. In other traditions, winter is death, spring rebirth. The memory of glaciers lingers in culture long after they melt. Could it be that the cycles of myth mirror the cycles of climate, repeating the lessons of survival across generations? Imagine standing at the edge of a glacier. It towers above, blue and white, creaking with hidden motion. The air is silent but for the groan of ice. You feel small, fragile, temporary. Yet in that smallness, thought expands. To survive here requires not only strength, but community, memory, imagination. Intelligence is not luxury, but necessity. Science tells us that the last great ice age ended about 12,000 years ago, giving rise to warmer climates, to agriculture, to cities. Yet without the training of cold, would humans have been ready? Would thought have grown so disciplined, so adaptive? Perhaps the gift of ice was not its cruelty but its demand that humans learn to think ahead. The question lingers. Is human smartness the child of warmth or of cold? Did intelligence bloom in comfort, or was it carved in the silence of ice ages? The glaciers recede. The rivers return. But the memory of ice remains, etched into the mind. The eyes of one human meet the eyes of another. A glance lingers, and something unspoken passes between them. Recognition, empathy, understanding. Long before laws or cities, before writing or mathematics, there was this: the mirror of others. Intelligence unfolds not only within a single mind, but in the space between minds, in the subtle exchange of emotion, gesture, and gaze. Psychologists speak of theory of mind, the ability to imagine what another person thinks, feels, intends. Infants show its beginnings. Children refine it. Adults depend upon it. Without it, conversation falters, cooperation collapses, culture cannot grow. Could it be that human smartness does not bloom from solitary thought, but from shared awareness? Each. Mind reflecting the other like mirrors facing across time? Picture an early hunt. A group moves silently through tall grass. No words are spoken, but each person knows the rhythm, the plan, the roles. A glance is enough, a gesture sufficient. Success requires not only strength, but anticipation of what others will do. In this silent choreography, intelligence takes collective form. The mirror of others makes survival possible. Even danger deepens this mirror. To see fear in another's eyes is to feel it oneself. To hear laughter is to share joy. Neuroscientists describe mirror neurons, cells that fire when one acts and when one observes another acting. The body itself is wired to reflect. Intelligence is not separate, it is resonant, tuned to others, shaped in empathy. And empathy is not only survival, it is imagination. To care for the injured, to protect the young, to mourn the dead, these acts require thought beyond the self. Archaeological evidence shows healed bones, proof that groups tended to the weak. Graves adorned with ochre and tools suggest remembrance of the departed. Could it be that the roots of culture grow from compassion, that intelligence is inseparable? From care, imagine sitting at the edge of a fire watching another's face lit by flame. Their eyes glisten, their hands move as they speak. You feel the story they tell, though you did not live it. Their memory becomes yours. In that moment, intelligence transcends the individual. It becomes shared, woven, multiplied. Even now, human thought depends upon this mirror. Conversations, teaching, art, music, all arise from resonance with others. To read a book is to share a stranger's mind. To gaze at a painting is to feel across centuries. To listen to a song is to let another's emotion enter your own. Intelligence is not only personal, it is collective, a chorus of minds echoing across time. Science tells us that cooperation gave evolutionary advantage. Groups that shared, that empathized, that coordinated, survived where others failed. But beyond advantage lies mystery. Why does the cry of another stir the heart? Why does beauty shared feel deeper than beauty alone? Perhaps human smartness is not measured by logic or invention, but by this resonance, the ability to imagine oneself in another's place. And yet, the mirror has shadows. To know another's fear is also to manipulate it. To imagine another's thought is also to deceive. Empathy and cunning grow together, twin reflections in the same glass. Intelligence, then, is double-edged, a tool of compassion, a weapon of control. The mirror of others shows both light and dark. The question lingers. Is human smartness truly within, or does it live only in reflection? In the gaze of others, in the shared spark between minds. The eyes meet. The silence speaks. And thought ripples outward, multiplied. Across the plains, across the deserts, across centuries of silence, the remnants remain. Great stones lifted and aligned, temples rising from earth, vast structures built for reasons half remembered, half forgotten. Fields once tilled now lie, empty. Walls crumble. Cities sleep beneath sand and forest. These ruins, stone temples, empty fields, are traces of human intention, of intelligence extended into the landscape. And yet their meanings dissolve into mystery. Archaeologists measure, excavate, record. They speak of agriculture, of ritual, of power, of necessity. Göbekli Tepe, built 11,000 years ago before farming had fully taken hold. Stonehenge, aligned with the solstices. Pyramids rising in desert silence. Great earthen mounds across continents. These are monuments to thought, but they are also enigmas. Why so much effort? Why stones heavier than the body can carry? Why fields abandoned? Why temples left behind? Perhaps intelligence is not only about survival, but about experiment. A society builds, tests, reaches outward, and sometimes collapses. Was smartness itself being tested in these places? Were they laboratories of meaning, where humans practiced the art of permanence against the inevitability of change? Imagine a field once alive with voices. Farmers sow grain, children run, priests chant at a carved pillar. Seasons pass, years unfold, centuries accumulate, then something shifts. Drought, flood, war, disease, silence descends. The field empties, the temple crumbles, the voices vanish. Only stone remains, mute yet enduring. Intelligence leaves marks, but meaning fades. The silence of ruins teaches. It shows that human thought is not linear, not a steady climb upward. It moves in cycles, rises and falls, experiments and abandons. Smartness is fragile, as vulnerable as crops to drought. Perhaps every temple is both a triumph and a reminder. Intelligence builds, but it also forgets. And yet, humans return to ruins. Pilgrims, tourists, scholars. They walk among fallen stones, sensing the weight of a lost meaning. They ask, who built this? Why? What were they seeking? In this questioning, intelligence is renewed. The emptiness itself becomes a teacher, inviting reflection on the limits of memory. Science may offer explanations: astronomy, agriculture, ceremony, social cohesion. But poetry whispers otherwise. Perhaps the stones were prayers, perhaps the fields were offerings, perhaps the builders were reaching toward the sky, toward the silence, toward the eternal. Intelligence, after all, is not only practical, it is longing. Imagine standing within a circle of stone, the wind sweeping across fields now barren. You feel the alignment with the sun, the weight of each block, the labor it must have taken, and yet you also feel the absence, the lives gone, the voices lost. Intelligence built this place, but silence now fills it. Perhaps the ruins are, themselves a form of story, told without words, told across millennia. The question lingers: do ruins reveal failure? Or do they reveal the persistence of thought, the way human minds carve marks even when meanings fade? Is smartness measured by what endures, or by what is forgotten? The stone temples stand. The fields lie empty, and the human mind wanders, imagining a line is drawn on stone, a mark pressed into clay, a symbol carved upon bone. The hand leaves something. Behind that is not a tool, not a weapon, not food, but meaning. Symbols carry weight beyond their form. They outlast their makers. They travel across time, silent, patient. In the weight of symbols lies a new horizon of intelligence, the power to let thought persist when the thinker is gone. Archaeologists find these traces in ochre lines from Blombos Cave, 70,000 years old. Cross-hatched marks, simple, yet deliberate, perhaps decoration, perhaps something more. The Venus figurines carved from ivory 25,000 years ago, shapes of body made abstract, cuneiform pressed into wet clay, hieroglyphs traced on temple walls. Each symbol is a bridge from one mind to another, across distance, across centuries. Could it be that human smartness reaches its height not in tools of survival, but in marks of meaning? To carve a symbol is to trust the future. The maker knows they will not always be present, but the mark will remain. In that gesture lies foresight, imagination, the will to be remembered. Perhaps the true leap of intelligence is this desire to be carried forward, to send thought into time as if into an ocean, uncertain of who will receive it. Picture an ancient person scratching lines into a bone. Around them, the world is immediate: food, fire, survival. Yet they pause, they carve, they create. The lines serve no clear necessity, yet they matter. They say, I was here, I thought, I made. This weight of symbol may be heavier than any stone. Symbols also transform thought itself. Once an idea can be written, it is freed from the limits of memory. Knowledge expands, accumulates, multiplies. Myths become scriptures, laws become tablets, trade becomes record. The mind no longer holds everything. It externalizes, letting marks carry what the brain cannot. Intelligence is no longer bound to one lifetime, but symbols are ambiguous. They invite interpretation, misreading, transformation. A carved spiral might be a calendar, a prayer, or simply art. Who can know? In this ambiguity lies both beauty and danger. Meaning slips, shifts, evolves. Intelligence is never fixed. It drifts with the weight of symbols, carried by new eyes, reimagined in new times. Even today, humans are surrounded by symbols, letters, numbers, icons, screens glowing with signs. We swim in them, often without noticing. Yet each one carries the same essence as those first marks on stone, the attempt to preserve thought, to connect minds across absence. Imagine holding a tablet inscribed thousands of years ago. Your fingers trace the grooves made by another hand, long vanished. In that moment, you are in conversation with the past. Intelligence has bridged the silence not through words spoken, but through symbols enduring. Science may describe this as the evolution of semiotics, the transition from oral to literate culture. But beneath the science lies wonder, that meaning can outlive the body, that thought can be heavier than flesh, more lasting than breath. The question lingers. Is human smartness the weight of symbols, the persistence of meaning beyond the moment? Or do symbols only reveal the fragility of memory, the way thought must cling to marks to avoid vanishing? The stone remains, the symbols endure, and the silence around them deepens. Breath moves like a tide within the body. Inhale, exhale, a soft wave touching the shore of ribs, receding again into silence. Long before numbers count days or letters net meanings, breath counts itself. Out of this rhythm, sound rises. Out of sound, song. The oldest instrument is not bone or reed, but the wind within the chest. Is song the secret root of human memory? Anthropologists notice how lullabies appear in every culture. Quiet songs that sway at the pace of breathing. Infants settle in. The crook of an arm as the voices rock them. The melody seems to guide the nervous system toward rest. Neuroscientists describe how slow exhalations calm the heart, how breathing can entrain rhythms of the brain. Song, then, is breath arranged, breath carrying feeling across the small distance between two lives. Picture a cold night in a shelter of stone. Wind presses at the entrance. Embers glow. A child cannot sleep. A hum begins. No words, just a tone that matches the fire's low hiss. The child's breath finds the rhythm. Eyelids sink. The room narrows to warmth and sound. A memory forms that has no picture, only cadence. The memory of safety made of breath. Archaeology offers shape for this soft idea. In caves of the Swabian Jura, flutes carved from bird bone and mammoth ivory are dated to more than 40,000 years. The maker understands both hand and lung, how much air to push, where to place fingers so the column of breath splits into intervals that please. Even the earliest instruments are collaborations. Bone, hand, and air braided together. If tools extend the grasp, perhaps instruments extend the breath, turning air into shared memory. Across the world, early architectures listen as much as they look. Chambers shaped to echo. Corridors that turn one voice into many. Builders find the note a room wants and give it back to the stone. A chant unfurls. The wall answers. Breath meets rock and returns as a shimmering twin. Here, intelligence feels. Communal, the single chest becoming choir, the single voice becoming place. Language, too, rides on breath. Vowels open like doors, consonants touch like pebbles in a stream. To speak is to sculpt air with tongue and lips. Before meaning takes hold, there is prosody, the rise and fall that signals comfort or warning, sacred or ordinary. Perhaps it is prosody the infant learns first, not the dictionary, but the tide. Could the grammar of breath have taught the grammar of thought? Phrases shaped by inhale, pauses set by exhale. Imagine the ocean's edge at dusk. Waves fold upon themselves with patient regularity. Someone hums, a line that rises as the wave rises, falls as it falls. Others join. The music has no words and needs none. It marks time without counting, binds bodies without rope, turns scattered awareness toward a single horizon. What is remembered after such a night? Not the exact notes. They dissolve. The feeling remains, a soft imprint under the ribs. Perhaps memory is less a library of facts than a coastline marked by tides. Science offers small anchors. The ear is tuned to ratios. Simple intervals soothe because their waves meet cleanly in air. Group singing lowers cortisol in measurable ways, aligns heartbeats into similar tempos, strengthens bonds without contracts. None of this requires theory. The evidence sits quietly in the chest. It feels better to breathe together. Intelligence may have seized upon this humble truth, turning it into ritual, ceremony, schooling for the emotions. Stone keeps traces of sound without holding the sound itself. Blackened ceilings where torches smoked. Footprints gathered in chambers whose acoustics answer clapping hands. The cave remembers by proxy. Here, voices once braided. The marks do not sing, but they point to singing the way shells point to sea. If a future mind found only our empty concert halls, would it guess the mornings and evenings of breath that filled them, ghosts of crescendos still circling the seats? A small philosophy rises from these observations. Thought is less a solitary flame than a rhythm shared, the way a circle of singers holds a tone steady while each lung tires in turn. What one person forgets, the group sustains. What fades in a single chest survives by passing into another. Memory becomes a relay of breath. If so, the mind is not bounded by skull and skin, it extends through the air that carries it, through the listeners who keep it. Consider a single syllable drawn long, held until edges blur. It is both nothing and everything, a sound without dictionary entry, a vowel that belongs to all tongues. It can be prayer, lament, celebration, or mere comfort for a drowsy child. It is the sky of language, open, unowned, present above particular meanings. Under such a sky, intelligence loosens its grip, drifts, and perhaps finds room to connect what is otherwise separate. Imagine that first flute again, raised to lips in a cave where the ocean's distant memory hums inside the rock. A long note breaks from bone. It hangs, quivers, then dissolves. Someone answers with voice. Another taps stone. A pattern grows. It does not decide anything. It does not conquer winter. It does not explain the moon. Yet it leaves a trace in bodies that will wake the next day more attuned, more together. Is this not a form of knowing, subtle, durable, almost invisible? The question drifts like smoke. If breath shapes song and song shapes memory, does intelligence begin not with the eye's measure, but with the chest's tide? Do we remember because we breathe? And do we think because we learn to sing our breaths to one another? No proof sits on the table, only hints. A sleeping child calmed by hum, a community steadied by chant, a flute's patient holes polished by fingers. The invitation is simple, quiet. Sit where you are and notice the slow wave within. Inhale, lifting like a small moon over water. Exhale, fading like a ripple into shore. Let a tone rise, barely louder than the room. Hold it. Release it. Imagine others, far behind you in time, doing the same under stone and sky. Breath meets breath across centuries. The mind listens and in listening, learns. The air falls still again. The ocean of the chest rests between tides, and in that pause, memory brightens like an ember waiting. For breath, night stretches thin over grasslands and breath clouds in the cool. Somewhere beyond the fire's edge, hooves stir dust. A shape passes through tall stems and vanishes into darkness. In the pause before action, minds begin to move. Quietly, invisibly, through futures that have not happened yet. Dreams of the hunt stir like wind over a plain. Perhaps imagination begins here, not as idle fantasy but as rehearsal, a lantern carried ahead of the body to light a path that only might exist. Anthropologists describe hunters who rise before dawn, reading prints pressed into damp soil. The track bends toward shade, breaks where the herd paused, then angles to a ridge for wind. The San people of the Kalahari practice persistence hunts that last hours. The Hadza read subtle scuffs with a fluency that rivals language. The body follows, but the mind runs further. If the antelope turns left at the rock, the wind will shift. If it tires at the river's bend, the throw must be closer. The hunt is a braid of maybes, an unfolding of if-then paths. Intelligence blooms in this branching. The hippocampus, deep in the brain, ticks like a quiet clock for places and paths. Neuroscience speaks of cells that fire for locations, place cells, and of sequences that replay during rest, even pre-play. Routes not yet taken. A sleeping animal rehearses a maze it will run tomorrow. So, too, perhaps, do early humans by their embers. The herd here, the spear there, the creek shining like a silver thread across the imagined morning. Thought becomes a map drawn on silence. Picture a circle of hunters the night before they travel out. The fire is low, ash breathes a faint glow. Hands sketch arcs on packed earth, the line of a ridge, the notch where water pools, the hollow a hoof leaves when the ground is soft. The plan is simple, almost nothing. Yet inside, each person carries a private theater, brief scenes of approach and release, of startle and flight, of failure and return. The body will choose only one path, but the mind travels many. Cave walls remember this rehearsal. Animals hurtle across stone in ochre and charcoal, bison with motion painted into many legs, horses with eyes wide, stags with antlers branching like frost. In some chambers, lines of dots trail behind bodies as if marking speed, arc, timing. Whether these are calendars or calls, charm or record, the images hold a feeling. The mind learns by running ahead of the day. A throw imagined 100 times may be truer when it comes. The atlatl, a spear thrower, extends the arm with leverage. Ethnographic echoes and archaeological finds suggest it spread across continents tens of thousands of years ago. A small hook and shaft teach physics without a chalkboard. Angle matters. Timing matters. The wrist's flick testifies to an equation no one writes. Each throw is a prediction shaped into wood and sinew. Intelligence hides in the curve of a trajectory, in a guess made precise by practice, in a future pulled a little nearer to hand. Even failure teaches. A spear thuds short, vanishes in grass. A footfall snaps a twig at the wrong moment. Wind shifts, and the scent carries. Memory grabs failure with a firmer grip than success. Do not step there. Do not throw then. The next rehearsal adjusts minutely, again and again. The hunt becomes an algorithm of feeling. Could it be that what we call wisdom is only this? 1,000 small futures tested against the one that happens? Imagine the ocean's edge at first light, Shorebirds lift and turn as one body. Fish cut silver furrows just beneath the skin of water. A figure watches, not to hunt the birds but to learn the seam between chance and pattern. Waves fold in slow equations. A stone leaves the hand, arcs, kisses a ripple's crest, skips twice, 3 times. The thrower smiles, not for play alone, but because the motion whispers the same law that governs a spear through wind. Play rehearses life. The game becomes a school for the unseen. Science notes that to picture tomorrow draws upon the same neural fabric as remembering yesterday. Episodic. Future thought, the textbooks call it. Damage to that fabric can dim both memory and imagination. Past and future, it seems, are twins inside the skull. The hunt leans on this twinship. Remember how the kudu turned in last season's heat. Imagine how it might turn now. The brain stitches scenes until one feels right, and feet take the first step. The stillness before the sprint holds a different knowledge, when not to move. An archer waits for the animal to lower its head. A spear rests until wind lays down. The mind rehearses patience. The body echoes the sky. Clouds slide, pause, slide again. Intelligence sometimes feels like speed, but often it is timing. Empty interval chosen on purpose. There is another hunt, quiet and inward. An idea stirs. It circles just out of view. A person sits by water, by fire, under a tree, and waits for it to come close. The same skills of tracking apply. Signs are faint. The ground is busy with unrelated prints. The air shifts. A thought leaves a trace in breath, in posture, in the subtle pull of attention. Follow. Lose it. Find it again. The throw becomes a sentence released, a line of song, a new way to shape clay. Perhaps all making is a hunt that happens inside. Imagine yourself walking an early morning path. You know where it bends, where the light spills through leaves, where the stones lie hidden under moss. And still, each day is not the same. You make small predictions. Your foot will land here, the shadow will be there, and the world either agrees or changes its mind. With each agreement, trust grows. With each change, awareness sharpens. Intelligence breathes in this exchange, a courteous conversation with what comes. There is a grace to the chase when it ends without blood. A missed throw, a startled herd that escapes whole, a hunter who lowers the spear and simply watches. Mercy is a future imagined, then chosen. Intelligence is not bound to success, it can be bound to restraint. What other futures become possible when the hand opens and lets a single path pass by? Ground holds memory long after the day is done. Hoof prints, dry and blur. A tuft of hair snags on thorn. A shallow bed in grass hints at the shape that rested there. The hunter scans this collage of what has been and feels, faintly, the pull of what could be. The hippocampus hums its quiet map. The chest measures time in breaths. The sky takes no position. The ocean, far off, continues its counting of waves. All of it becomes one instrument tuned to a single question. Where does the next step belong? And so, the question lingers like a track at the edge of shadow. Did imagination begin as a practical art? A rehearsal run not for glory, but for bread and bone? If so, does every dream, even the sky-broad ones about other worlds, carry the scent of dust and grass, the soft geometry of a throw? Or is the hunt only one surface on a deeper water, and the mind would have learned to cast itself forward no matter where it lived? The invitation is gentle. Close the eyes. Let the quiet plain stretch inward. See a path unspool ahead. No rush, no chase, only a line of maybe steps drawn by breath. Notice how the body leans toward certain turns, how the heart quickens at others. Watch the imagined day pass in soft rehearsal. then let it dissolve like mist when the sun rises. Walk the real morning lightly, listening for the echo of those dream tracks underfoot. Dawn lifts. The fire sighs. Somewhere in the grass, life moves in its own design. The human mind moves too, slower, sooner, toward futures it can only partly know. The ocean meets the land in a thin, bright line. Foam writes and rewrites a brief script upon sand. Stones glisten, then dull, as the tide breathes in and out. Here, at this shifting boundary, humans linger. The edge is a teacher, part water, part earth, part sky mirrored in a skin of salt. Perhaps this narrow band becomes a cradle for cleverness, a place where minds learn to balance between two worlds. Archaeologists sift through shell middens that rise like pale dunes, heaps of oyster, mussel, and clam left from thousands of meals. In their layers, charcoal and bone speak of hearths, nets, hooks, and smoke. At South Africa's Pinnacle Point, early humans gather shellfish and heat-treat stone. In island caves, tiny fishhooks carved from shell point to patient hands and tidal rhythms understood. The record is partial, weathered, but its whisper is clear. Along shorelines, people study the sea the way others study books. Salt carries sound differently. Waves fold and break with a tempo the chest can match. The sky feels closer, as if the horizon were a drawn breath held lightly. Under such conditions, planning becomes palpable. The next wave will crest. The next ebb will reveal rocks. At low tide, the fish weir will darken into a line. Intelligence here is a choreography with the moon. Imagine a stone weir curving across a tidal flat, a patient crescent that traps fish when water falls away. Hands lifted those stones one by one, learning from each tide which gaps to close, which channels to keep. The design is simple, but it rests on cycles larger than a day. The moon turns, water follows, the weir gathers what moves. A quiet engineering unfolds, made of waiting and revision. Coasts are thresholds not only for food, but for travel. A tree becomes a dugout, a skin becomes a sail, a star becomes a waypoint. Near shore, currents stream like rivers through a wider river. Some carry warmth, some cold. Some deliver kelp forests dense with life. A canoe skims the edge, reading water by color and chop. By the way, swell wraps a headland. Knowledge collects in the body, the tilt of a paddle, the count of strokes to cross a bay, the logic of swells that do not forget the wind that raised them days ago. In many traditions, navigators learn the sky by its reflection upon the sea. Constellations rise from the horizon like familiar friends. Swells from distant storms cross thousands of miles and can be felt with closed eyes. The ocean teaches a grammar of motion. The shoreline translates it into practice. Launch at dawn, return when the evening star stands above the palm, follow the dark band where freshwater slides over salt. Intelligence becomes an apprenticeship to patterns that never speak aloud. There are quieter teachers, too. Iodine and other trace gifts of the sea fold into diets. Soft, fatty fish carry oils that the brain favors. Children who eat from the tide grow on a timetable shaped by seasons and moons. Stable isotope signatures caught in bone tell of meals, shared with gulls and otters, of lives lived where salt dries to crystals on skin. Biology and culture braid, neither complete without the other. The shoreline is also a market of meanings. Shell becomes bead. Bead becomes gift. Gift becomes bond between groups who meet where rivers end. Ideas cross water faster than feet cross land. A better net spreads from cove to cove. A myth about a shining fish travels with a trading canoe. A new way to smoke meat outlasts a winter of storms. Along coasts, knowledge arrives like driftwood, already shaped by other hands. Later, cities cluster by harbors because edges gather not only goods, but minds. Picture a child sitting where waves just fail to reach, drawing spirals in wet sand with a scallop shell. The design lasts a minute, maybe two, before foam erases it. And yet the gesture teaches more than the mark, that time has texture, that making can be beautiful even when it is brief, that the world will answer and then undo. On such a lesson, patience is built. On such patience, craft. Science adds small anchors to these images. Many early dense settlements appear along coasts and estuaries. Shell rings and mounds line ancient shores. Fish traps and raised fields emerge where salt and fresh water mingle. The record is incomplete because shorelines move, glaciers melt, seas rise, coasts drown. What we find are often the high places, the rarely flooded corners, the lucky pockets, that escaped the tide's revision. The rest is a library washed clean. If genius grows at the edge, much of its record lies underwater. Edges sharpen senses. Light is harsher on open water. Glare teaches the eye to read contrast. Smell carries salt, rot, tar, smoke, messages of distance and direction. Skin registers wind shifts before the mind names them. Intelligence recruits these threads into a single braid. Gather shellfish today. Set nets at dusk. Mend lines when the storm passes. Leave the headland before the swell grows steep. Thinking becomes seasonal, tidal, lunar, and yet the edge also refuses certainty. Fog erases horizon. Storms break memory's neat patterns. A year of poor runs follows a year of plenty. Minds that live here learn humility. Prediction becomes a tentative art, updated with each day's tide. Perhaps smartness is not mastery at all, but a stance. Knees slightly bent, attention loose but alert, willing to be surprised. The question lingers like a gull's cry fading into mist. Why do minds seem to wake more brightly where earth touches sea? Is it the abundance that frees hours for craft and story? The boundary that multiplies choices? The rhythm that trains attention to return and return again? Or is the shoreline merely mirror, reflecting an inner edge where thought meets world, and the tide of awareness writes and rewrites what it knows? The invitation is simple. Imagine standing barefoot at dusk where waves thin to lace. The sand cools. The sky lowers itself into water until the two are one. Feel the pull backward at your ankles as the tide withdraws and the slight forward nudge as it returns. Notice how the body begins to predict the next touch. Then lets prediction go. Let the horizon draw a straight, calm line through the mind. Ask nothing of the sea. Hear what it offers anyway. Foam fades. Stones shine, then dull. The ocean breathes. Against the land and the human mind, small, salt-streaked, listening, breathes with it. Threads run through the world that no eye can see. A glance becomes a line. A gift becomes a knot. A promise becomes a bridge. Around fires and across rivers, over mountains and later beneath oceans, humans weave themselves to one another with invisible threads. In these quiet linkages, intelligence learns to stretch beyond the single skull, to live in the spaces between lives. Perhaps the mind is never only a solitary flame. Perhaps it is a small lantern in a lattice of light. Anthropologists speak of limits to intimate circles of numbers that recur, roughly a village-sized web where names are remembered and duties felt. Within such rings, gossip is not trivial. It is information, a current that keeps the web from tearing. Oxytocin rises with touch and trust. Pupils widen, shoulders lower. Chemistry and custom collaborate. The body learns to be porous to other. Bodies and a collective memory takes shape. Who hunts well? Who sings the weather? Who tends the sick? Intelligence becomes distributed, woven into relations like fibers in rope. Picture a plain at dusk, scattered hearths glimmering. From a ridge they seem like small constellations lying on the ground. Each ember holds a family, a story, a supply of water hidden in the day's path. Lines pass between them. Someone's sister here, a cousin there, an old alliance sealed, with shells. No line is visible, and yet the plain is laced like frost on grass. To step anywhere is to cross connections. Archaeology finds hard traces of soft ties. A shard of obsidian, chipped into a blade far from the volcanic dome that birthed it, points to exchange. Rock carries a geochemical signature like a name. Beads of marine shell lie inland. Ochre from one cliff stains stone thousands of miles away. In the Trobriand Islands, shell necklaces journey clockwise and armbands counterclockwise, each piece perpetual traveler, each voyage a thread that keeps trust alive. The routes shift, but the lesson persists. Objects move, so relationships can stand still. Beneath forests, mycelium lace soil, filaments passing sugars, warnings, perhaps instructions from root to root. Biologists map this wood wide web and wonder at its quiet traffic. Humans, too, seem to grow better in such networks. News of a drought travels as fast as feet can take it. A surplus of fish leads to a feast that recruits future help. A new way. To twist fiber into rope radiates outward and returns later as a net mended in a different pattern. The web hums without a central voice. The first roads are not roads, but habits. The way feet prefer a ridge to a ravine, a ford to a cliff, stand of trees to an open plain. Paths fix into earth, and the earth begins to remember the web. Later, the web lifts from land to water, canoes taking the shape of currents, and later still to wire, copper taught to carry the flash of news, oceans stitched by telegraph, then by fiber. A storm rocks a boat in one age, a storm of words, crosses seabeds in another. The thread remains the same. Imagine a hand looped with plant fiber, twisting, until two strands become one, then three. The cord grows stronger as it grows more complex. So do communities. Marriage braids strangers, ritual braids seasons to gatherings. Law braids memory to consequence. Not all braids hold, some unravel under strain, some bind too tightly and chafe. Yet the impulse to twine is relentless. Intelligence wants a surface larger than itself to travel upon. Science sets a small stake in this meadow of metaphor. When people cooperate on a task, subtle synchronies appear, breathing tempos align, heart rates drift toward the same beat, micromotions echo between bodies. In choirs, pulses gather, in crews, oars dip as if one arm held them all. The group becomes instrument. No one decides to merge. Bodies simply find the shared groove. Perhaps the mind learns clearest in these grooves, knowledge passing not by command, but by rhythm. And culture grows along these threads the way dew beads along silk. A lullaby travels with a marriage, a recipe with a migration, a myth with a trader's laugh. One village dyes cloth with a plant that another thought poisonous. A third discovers that plant eases fever when brewed faintly. The web does not argue, it recombines. Intelligence becomes recombinant, less a ladder than a loom. Yet threads hold shadows too. A rumor can choke a life, a boundary can harden. A circle can close around those outside it. Nets can trap as well as catch. Here the mind learns a different art. How to loosen without tearing, how to widen without breaking, how to unknot what fear has tightened. Perhaps true smartness lives in the hands that can unbind as skillfully as they bind. Picture a stone at low tide, slick with algae, bright with small snails. Between this stone and the next, a strand of kelp stretches and releases as waves pass. Sometimes it holds something, drift, weed, a small crab, a glinting feather. And sometimes it holds nothing at all, only water. Human ties feel like this, present then slack, burdened then free, sometimes net, sometimes harp. The same thread can sing or strangle. There are measurements that hint at the web's shape. Graph lines with nodes and edges, degrees of separation. Centralities. They reveal hubs and isolates, bridges and clusters. Yet numbers do not catch the warmth of a pot set quietly at a neighbor's door, nor the hush of a hand on a shaking shoulder, nor the way a small boat waits an extra hour because a late friend is part of the crew. The math shows structure. The life is in the kindness. Intelligence needs both, a schema to see the whole, and a pulse to keep the whole human. Some ask whether each person is a mind, or whether the real mind is the mesh. Each of us a cell in a larger organ that learns, forgets, dreams. If so, the rise of cities merely thickens the weave. Writing and roads speed the shuttle. Glass and wire and code tangle it further. But the original thread remains what it always is. A breath offered toward another breath. A trust extended and returned. The modern web repeats an old prayer in faster light. The question lingers like a shimmer of heat over stone. Are humans smart because they are clever alone, or because they are tied endlessly to others? Each thought pulling gently on faraway minds, each idea arriving braided with many hands. If the threads were cut, would brilliance dim like a hearth left to ash? Or would new filaments sprout as stubborn as grass through cracks beginning the weave again? The invitation is quiet. Imagine, for a moment, the map of your life not as a line but as a web traced in faint starlight. Each point a person, a place, a season, each thread a shared meal, a walk, a word kept. See how the map brightens where many paths cross. Harbor, market, kitchen, shoreline, and how it softens where solitude heals. Stand in the center without claiming it. Feel the gentle pull from all directions, and breathe. The web holds. The web learns. And somewhere along one thin strand, a new thought begins to travel. Stone cools in evening air. The ocean mutters to itself beyond the dune. Above, the sky draws its own net of stars. Between them, threads invisible hum with human memory, and the mind, light as silk, strong as rope, listens. On a quiet shore after tide, shells stipple the sand like small moons set in a field of dusk. Some gleam with mother of pearl, some dull with salt, some spiral inward until the eye falls softly to a center that never quite arrives. The mind pauses here, lulled by a geometry the hand can hold. Does the spiral teach before any teacher speaks? A shell grows without forgetting itself. As the animal adds material along a lip, the curve widens but keeps its shape. Mathematicians later call such a curve logarithmic. The distance from the center swells while the angle of the swirl stays true. The spiral turns, and the tangent keeps the same tilt wherever it goes, equiangular, steady as breath. To early eyes it is only beautiful. To careful hands, it suggests a rule whispered by the sea. Could this quiet recurrence be a first lesson? That growth can preserve form? That change can keep faith with itself? Picture a child long ago holding a whirl against the palm. Fingers trace ridge after ridge, each ridge a record of a day the ocean does not remember, but the shell does. Counting begins here, perhaps, not with abstract numbers, but with touch. One, and another, and another. Later, a string of shells becomes a necklace. Later still, strands become records, debts remembered, treaties retold. In many places, cowries travel hand to hand as currency, as promise, as story made portable. The sea lends its shapes to the market and, with them, the habit of keeping track. Archaeologists kneel by riverbanks and caves and lift small proofs. A notched bone from Ishango, near the equator's lakes, bears clustered cuts. An old tally, 20 millennia deep, that some read as arithmetic and others as moonkeeping. Elsewhere, the Lobombo bone carries a ladder of marks older still, perhaps guided by cycles and bodies that mirror the moon's. Whether these notches count days or hunts or something we cannot name, they suggest a mind that anchors time to marks. The shell's rings echo the same idea in limestone. Growth inscribes memory. The shoreline itself teaches counting by absence and return. Twice in a day, the sea steps backward and then forward, inviting the gathering of mussels from wet stone, the lifting of baskets from fish traps. Work and water keep pace with a lunar clock. A person who learns this clock without the word for it knows nonetheless. The 11th tide after the full is best for this cove. 3 more nights will make the pool shallow enough for children to wade. Numbers live first in bodies that wait and rise. Inland, spirals bloom on land as the sky's light warms fields. Sunflowers arrange seeds in crossing lattices. Pine cones twist in paired staircases. Aloe leaves queue along a stem at angles that avoid the shade of neighbors. The mind notices. Before it calculates, the eye rests when spacing is fair. Much later, philosophers of pattern write of a golden proportion, of ratios that recur. Botanists measure the twist between leaves, the so-called golden angle near 137.5 degrees, because it lets each leaf find light. Not every plant follows this law. Not every shell holds the same curve. Yet the recurrence is enough to suggest a world that prefers fit over crowding, grace over waste. Consider the nautilus, often summoned in books as emblem. Its chambers step outward neatly, though no sacred ratio governs each step. The animal builds room as it grows, sealing doors behind it, carrying an architecture of former selves. The geometry is patient rather than perfect, practical rather than mystical. Still, the image lingers. A staircase spiraling through time, each chamber, a yesterday that floats today. The mind learns from the picture what it does not find in proofs, that identity can be kept by the way change is made. In a different century, a scholar named Darcy Thompson sets forms upon grids and shows how one can be transformed into another. By stretching space, the way a fish's silhouette might become another species by a gentle warp. He draws shells on squared paper and tilts the axes until the whirl aligns with a law. The lesson hums even when the mathematics fades. Biology and number are not strangers. Growth wears equations softly, like a shawl. Imagine a circle scratched. With a stick into damp sand, then, starting at any point, a line that coils steadily inward. A child fills the coil with small stones. 1, 2, 3. The stones press cool into the palm. The spiral tightens. The counting slows with the curve. Without knowing it, the child rehearses limits. There is always room for one more, until there is not. Numbers meet geometry, where breath meets patience. Shells instruct in symmetry as well. Many carry left-handed or right-handed twists, and some species favor one side almost absolutely. The animal's body chooses a chirality and grows faithfully in that direction. Hands learn this lesson each time they tie a cord. Twist left, ply right, and the rope holds. Reverse the dance, and the fibers fight. The sea writes handedness into limestone. The hand reads it back into craft. Trade turns shells into stories. Wampum belts in some North American nations record promises in purple and white quahog beads. The pattern keeps memory straight when mouths disagree. In other places, heishi beads line necklaces like the steady beat of a drum. A person runs a thumb along them to recall a sequence, a genealogy, a law. Memory, once bound to breath, now threads through a tangible set of small moons. Counting becomes wearable, and meaning survives the night. Science, later, wraps words around these hunches. Self-similarity, scale invariance, phyllotaxis. It gives equations to curves once met as kin. The spiral R ichirdiu hart ekai hasiksi. Dobepsi says only that growth compounds, that each turn is like the last, but larger. An accountant hears the same rule in interest that accrues. A farmer hears it in seed that doubles. A storyteller hears it in tales that return with variations. The sea taught it early without speaking. But perhaps none of this matters if the shell does not first make the mind still. The spiral gathers attention the way a small eddy collects leaves, gently, without force. Looking at it, the pulse eases. Time feels less like a line and more like a circle that expands. In such calm, thought becomes receptive. Maybe this is the shell's truest arithmetic. It adds quiet to the sum of the day, subtracts haste, multiplies wonder, divides worry into smaller parts that wash away. The question lingers like a tide pool reflecting sky. Did shells and their spirals teach counting and form to early minds, or did minds carry counting to the shore and hear only their own echo in limestone? If there were no shells, would the eye have found other spirals, the curl of a fern, the arc of a hawk's turn, and learned the same rule by a different teacher? The invitation is small and tender. Imagine walking a strand at low tide with empty pockets and unhurried steps. Choose one spiral, any size. Trace its ridges with a fingertip, counting softly, not to reach a number, but to feel how each ridge repeats without being the same. Hold the shell to the ear and hear the room. You are standing in, folded back by curve and air, pretending to be the sea. Then place the shell down where foam can find it again, and watch the water edit the sand's arithmetic into smoothness. Clouds move. Stone cools. The ocean remakes its edge. In a palm, for a moment, a small moon keeps its curve, and the human mind follows, turning gently toward pattern that does not insist, toward number that grows by listening. Between palm and earth, a softness yields. Clay lifts from riverbank and pond edge, cool as shadow, heavy as rain. It takes the shape of fingers without protest, remembering each press the way shoreline remembers the retreat of a wave. And then comes fire. The two oldest teachers, earth and flame, meet, and something new appears, a vessel that does not return to mud when the water comes. How much does this quiet miracle change the mind that makes it? Archaeologists brush soil from sherds that gleam when wet. A broken rim with cord impressions, a base darkened by ancient smoke, a figurine whose hip still curves from a hand long. Gone. In some places, vessels appear astonishingly early. Deep cave hearths in East Asia, where pits of clay hardened near coals perhaps 20 millennia ago. Elsewhere, Japan's Jomon pots blossom with rope-marked skin more than 16,000 years in the past. Earlier still, in a colder Europe, a small fired figure, the so-called Venus of Dolny Viestonich, bears the fingerprint of its maker, a touch baked into time around 29,000 years ago. The dates are debated, revised, refined. The conclusion remains gentle but firm. Humans learn to persuade mud to survive fire, and in doing so, they alter their days. Fire in clay makes new foods possible. A pot steadies over coals, and water holds heat long enough to soften root and seed. Grains surrender their starch. Bones give up hidden fats. Bitter plants mellow to broth. Diet shifts. Time in chewing shortens. Nourishment deepens. In a vessel, stones do not touch lips, but they can be heated and dropped to simmer. Porridge becomes a wordless technology for turning inedible into gentle. Perhaps intelligence thickens here like stew, less in the blaze than in the patience between boil and taste. A vessel also makes time larger. Liquids are stored against. A lean season. Seed is kept dry. Souring and fermenting are courted rather than feared. A sealed jar becomes an agreement with future days. To trust tomorrow, the mind must first imagine it. A pot becomes a promise shaped in earth. Ownership, too, grows around containers. A basket frays. A skin perishes. A pot endures among ashes until it breaks, and even then it remains as sherds that carry patterns like signatures. Memory finds a new ally. Archaeologists later will read whole horizons by pottery forms alone, arranging sherds into beds of time. The craft itself instructs. Hands coil ropes of clay in slow spirals, smoothing with water, and slip. Temper, crushed shell, sand, ground. Sherd is folded in to prevent cracks, teaching that old failures, ground fine, can steady the new. Walls dry to leather hard. A tool of bone or wood burnishes the surface to a sheen that will drink less water. Then the kiln, first a pit under brush, later a domed chamber with 2 rooms, one for fire, one for wear. Air matters. Whether the flame feeds on wind or is starved decides if the pot blushes red in oxygen or darkens in smoke. The potter learns by color, by sound, by scent. A kiln speaks in a language of heat the skin can read at a distance. Here, intelligence becomes tactile thermodynamics, a physics learned under the eyelid rather than on a board. Clay does not only hold food, it holds recounting. In the floodplains where rivers braid through silt, small tokens of baked clay appear: cones, spheres, lentils, each shape standing for sheep, jars, measures of grain. Sealed inside clay envelopes and impressed on their skins, these tokens keep accounts honest when words forget. Later, the impressions abstract further, the sign replaces the thing, and script slowly descends from mathematics of goods. Fire. In clay turns, counting into writing. Memory moves from breath to tablet. Law hardens like a vessel set on a shelf. And then there are glazes. Ash settles on hot surfaces and melts, leaving glass in a thin skin. Someone notices and feeds the ash, on purpose. Someone else mixes minerals ground like spices and sees green and blue bloom, where flame licks longest. Temperatures rise. Kilns learn to breathe in carefully arranged drafts. Stoneware rings when tapped. Porcelain arrives in the slow patience of experiment. Glass, too, waits nearby. Sand taught to become window and lens. From pots to crucibles is a short step. Clay endures enough heat to birth copper from ore, then bronze, then iron. A bowl for soup becomes a bowl for smelting. The kitchen trains the forge. Fire in clay multiplies fires elsewhere. Imagine a quiet room of clay walls cool to the touch. On the floor, a circle of vessels, jars with shoulders like small planets, bowls with lips fine as leaves, a ladle resting as if asleep. Outside, sky burns white. Inside, the pots are dusk-colored, whispering of water they have carried, of grain they have kept safe from the damp. The room feels like a chest with many hearts. Intelligence here is not spectacular. It is stored and poured, lifted and ladled, shared spoon by spoon. Science anchors the romance with measurement. Thermoluminescence records the last time of pots. Quartz crystals saw heat above a critical point, allowing an age to be estimated from the glow they give off in a lab. Petrography slides a sherd thin as a petal and peers through light to know which sand and stone were folded in. Chemistry tastes residues trapped in walls, milk, fish oil, plant wax, revealing meals long digested. The vessel keeps what bodies forget. The earth becomes archive because it was first a bowl, yet pots break. Whole dynasties of form survive only as fragments, edges that suggest lips, feet that hint at bellies. A midden of sherds behind a village mound looks like rubble until it is read as a calendar. This curve belongs to the time when rims inset, this Polish to the age when traders arrived by river, this paint to the brief season when someone believed geometry could ask for rain. Across silence, clay still speaks. The mind learns more than recipes in this company. Clay, when wet, forgives. It can be returned to slip, reworked, made again. Clay, when fired, does not forgive. It keeps its shape or it shatters. Such finality is a kind of ethic. Plans matter before flames. Attention is demanded early, not later. Perhaps this discipline migrates outward. The builder looks twice before placing a stone. The storyteller thinks through an ending before the first word. The navigator watches weather before the sail is raised. Fire in clay educates foresight. Consider the symbolic image that lingers. A pot inverted becomes a dome. A dome turned skyward becomes a pot. Villages roof themselves like vessels, set upon the earth. Kilns resemble small houses and houses large kilns. The analogy travels both ways, home as container, container as home. Food, words, warmth, each asks for a room that holds without swallowing, that withstands weather and time. Intelligence fills these rooms, then steps outside and looks up at the larger vessel of the night. Stars scatter like silica caught in glaze. The moon shines like a cooled porcelain bowl. The question hums in the kiln's throat. Did shaping earth with fire change thought itself? Without pots, would surplus have grown walls? Would roads have braided markets? Would script have hardened, from token to sign? Or was clay only mirror, taking on the forms that minds were already ready to make? Vessels inevitable as hands, fire as old as fear. The invitation is soft. Imagine kneeling by a river bend, thumbs pressing a coil upward, turning slowly, smoothing with a wet pebble until the wall is even. Hear the low talk of others at their work, the river's longer sentence behind them. See the vessel stand, imperfect but standing, then watch it glow dull orange through brush flame, hardening from breath's idea into earth's memory. Lift it when it cools. Pour water. Feel its coolness against your palm. Hold, for a moment, the thought that making can last. The vessel sits in dusted light. A shadow gathers inside like a small night. Somewhere far away, waves erase and redraw the same thin line. Stone, sky, and ocean wait. In the circle of a cooled rim, the human mind sees time that can be carried. A seed rests in the palm. Light as dust, patient as silence. Buried, it waits. Rain comes, sun follows, and from darkness something unfolds that knows how to rise. To place seed into soil is to enter into covenant with time, to gamble on futures that have not yet appeared. When humans begin this act deliberately, not as gatherers but as planters, the world shifts. Agriculture plants more than food. It plants ideas. Archaeologists find traces in the Fertile Crescent. Wild wheat transformed by slow hands into harvestable. Grain, barley, and lentils tamed. Elsewhere, millet rises in China. Rice along river deltas, maize from teosinte in the Americas. Each domestication is a long conversation, an unseen dialogue between human and plant. Hands select larger kernels, gentler husks. Fields favor plants that bend to harvest. Slowly, nature and culture entwine until neither is fully separate. Could it be that intelligence is shaped not only by stone and fire but by seed learning human rhythm? A field requires patience different from the hunt. The hunter dreams of tomorrow's track. The farmer dreams of a season ahead. To plant is to think in months, in years, in generations. A lineage of wheat extends as surely as a lineage of names. Intelligence stretches outward, learns foresight by listening to the earth's own calendar. But with seed comes settlement. No longer restless, people linger near fields. Villages rise, storage pits deepen, walls are built to guard grain. A new architecture of mind appears: property, inheritance, surplus. The field holds not only plants, but social arrangements, hierarchies, Obligations. Did agriculture sow the first rows of law? Imagine an early garden, a patch of cleared soil, stumps blackened by fire, ash mixed with earth. In shallow furrows lie seeds gathered from last season's harvest. Children pat soil over them, feet pressing lightly. Rain falls. Green shoots rise. Weeks pass, and the shoots lean in wind like small prayers. The family watches. Their survival grows before their eyes. The act is simple, yet profound. It is trust given to time. Agriculture also transforms memory. Seasonal rituals emerge. Planting songs, harvest feasts, calendars etched in stone. The year becomes a circle of tasks, repeated yet never identical. Knowledge must be passed carefully. When to sow, how deep, which moon to trust, which pests to guard against. Forgetting is costly. Remembering becomes sacred. Story and ritual weave into farming as tightly as hoe and seed. Science measures the genetic drift, grains that do not scatter, maize ears that swell unnaturally large, rice that clings to stalks until gathered. Human selection reshapes the genome. Plant shapes reshape human culture. A coevolution unfolds. Intelligence is no longer solitary. It is reciprocal, the result of partnership. But fields also bring vulnerability. Crops can fail. Soil can tire. Communities tethered to land may face famine when rains do not come. Smartness must adapt again. Irrigation, carved from river, terraces etched into hillside, granaries filled against drought. The very fragility of farming presses minds toward greater planning, greater invention. Even today, the imagery of seed lingers in thought. Ideas are planted, nurtured, harvested. Knowledge grows in fields of learning. Weeds threaten it. Fruits of labor are gathered. The metaphor is so deep that it feels natural. To think is to sow. Could it be that agriculture shaped not only survival, but the very metaphors through which intelligence understands itself? Picture a seed in the dark soil. Its coat softens, a shoot curls upward, a root downward. No one commands it. No one teaches it. Yet it knows. The farmer watches, waits, tends. Intelligence is not in forcing, but in aligning with this hidden law of growth. Perhaps to be smart is to learn how to wait. The question lingers. Did humans domesticate plants, or did plants domesticate humans, drawing them into fields, into routines, into cycles that became culture? The seed rests, the soil holds, and the mind bends gently toward patience. Night opens like a slow-breathing book, and the first page is star salt scattered over dark. Shapes gather where none exist, lines stitched between lights, animals, and ships, and heroes taking form by the patience of the eye. This is mapping before parchment, geometry before number, a quiet cartography pinned to the sky. How long have humans drawn meaning in constellations? As long, perhaps, as they have leaned back upon stone or sand and let the mind trace threads through silence. On baked clay from ancient Mesopotamia, a catalog survives. The old scholars later call it Emil Apin. It lists stars that rise just before dawn at certain seasons, anchors for calendars and planting and the setting out of journeys. The marks are small, the distances vast. A farmer reads a wedge-cut tablet, then watches a glittering point lift above a low horizon. The field and the firmament share a schedule. Intelligence learns to braid earth time with sky time. Far to the east, on a strip of silk found in a desert cave, a careful hand once brushed a map of the heavens. Thousands of points grouped into asterisms, the arcs of the ecliptic winding like a river. The map is portable night, rolled and unrolled, a sky that can travel under a roof. It does what maps do. It makes memory transportable. The mind no longer needs only to recall. It can consult. Across oceans, navigators step into canoes the color of dusk and lift their eyes to a star compass kept not in ink but in breath. They hold a horizon in the body, an interior circle partitioned by directions with names that taste of wind and swell. One star sets where another rises, and the canoe threads those points like a needle. Nearer islands teach their wave signatures. Distant storms send long swells that can be felt in the dark with closed eyes. On shore, thin sticks lashed with coconut fiber make abstract seas. Marshall Islands stick charts that diagram swell and current, atoll, and refraction. A web of lines remembers what water will not hold. The sailor studies, then sails. The ocean becomes legible without speaking. In lands where red desert meets long memory, constellations are drawn from darkness rather than light, an emu in the sky, traced by the black lanes across the Milky Way. Stories walk with stars across the seasons. Songs carry roots like rivers, carry silt. Songlines stitch earth to heaven, and the traveler moves by melody. The sky is not merely above, it is a mirrored country, a map one can hum. Pleiades, small cluster like a drop of milk spilled in night, returns again and again to human calendars. When those stars rise before dawn, certain peoples plant. When they set at dusk, others harvest. Somewhere else, a new year begins, and mourners lift their eyes to remember. The same handful of fire becomes clock, omen, festival. Intelligence is not only in naming, it is in allowing one shape to serve many meanings without breaking. In the Mediterranean dusk of another era, a patient observer notices that a star once rising in exact company with the solstice now arrives a sliver later with each life. The background tilts very slowly. The heavens precess like a top. A catalogue of fixed stars is not, after all, entirely fixed. The map moves under the cartographer. What does a mind learn when its measurements whisper that even the stable is wandering? Meanwhile, in cities where domes hold prayer like bowls hold water, astronomers grind astrolabes and polish brass. A disk pierced with sighting holes can weigh sun against shadow, star against angle, turning sky into instrument. Tables of rising and setting arc across pages. Domes are inscribed with constellations wrought as vines of light. To climb a minaret. At dawn and measure a crescent's sliver is to lean intelligence against a curve older than law. Picture a field of stone warmed by day, now cooling under a new moon's faint wash. Someone lies back upon the slab. The rock gives it slow release of heat. The air smells of dry grass and river. Overhead, Orion leans forward, belt bright, shoulders lifted. A hand rises and connects points. 1, 2, 3, then extends the line toward a horizon tree. The gesture feels like ownership and humility at once. The figure disappears. The stars remain. A private map dissolves into common night. Grounding details accumulate like sand in the hem of a garment. Petroglyphs near old camp places show dotted rows that may track a star's march. A Roman ceiling preserves a zodiac in painted squares. In a desert canyon, a tower window admits a dagger of light at solstice noon. In a mountain city, a builder sets streets to cardinal winds. Walls face the sunrise not by accident. Each structure is a bookmark placed in an endless book. But constellations are not only instruments. They are stories that tie the heart to the cold. They give faces to patterns and kin to distances. A hunter in one sky is a canoe in another, an ostrich in another still. The stars do not argue. They host what meaning arrives. Intelligence does not insist on one diagram. It welcomes plurality and learns to translate. Consider the image of a map layered upon a map. A sky filled with figures mirrored by a ground laced with paths. The sea traced with wave diagrams mirrored by a memory traced with verses. A silk chart. Beside a shell compass, a clay tablet beside a song. The beauty lies not in any single system, but in the way all point toward the same quiet feet, taking a moving, glittering vastness and making it usable without emptying it of wonder. And always there is drift. A culture falls quiet. Its map is folded into the soil. A new map rises from other hands, other roads, other winds. The stars are patient with human endings. Maps change, and yet the act of mapping continues. Perhaps intelligence is precisely this persistence, the refusal to let the night be only a ceiling instead of also a language. Imagine standing at a shoreline where, earlier, waves taught patience. Now the tide is high, and the ocean lifts the horizon very slightly. A bright point clears a palm's dark edge. A grandmother murmurs a name for that star. A child repeats it, half singing. In that soft repetition, a new map is born, folded into a small breath. No parchment, no brass. Just voice and the way a fingertip aims another gaze. Science offers the calm footnotes, catalogs assembled and revised, positions measured to fractions of degrees, instruments refined until air itself becomes a medium to correct. A modern star map can chart invisibles, radio arcs, X-ray bursts, microwaves left from a beginning no eye could witness. And yet the old habit survives. Even under city glow, someone looks up, finds a familiar tilt of 3 stars, and feels located. The most complicated atlas returns, in the end, to a small reassurance. There, that shape, again. The question lingers like a thin silver line between sea and sky. Do humans draw constellations because the heavens suggest them, or because minds are built to close gaps with story? If the stars were scattered differently, would different animals run there, different boats sail there, different laws tick in the calendars kept on Earth? The invitation is quiet. Let the breath slow. Allow the eyes to soften until points blur and lines appear where none exist. Trace one figure, then let it go. Think of others who have traced other shapes under other names, on other nights, by other seas. Feel how a map can be both precise and merciful, useful enough to guide a boat between islands, gentle enough to cradle a myth. Then let the sky be only itself again, light traveling, darkness resting, silence that teaches by not speaking. Stone cools, the ocean hushes its line, the sky holds its patient script of fire. Between them, a mind maps and unmaps, content to remember and to wonder. Firelight once showed faces. Starlight once drew paths, but with sparks of metal struck from stone, a new light rises, a gleam not of flame or sky, but of earth itself transformed. Copper softens in heat, then hardens into shapes more pliant than stone. Gold refuses to tarnish, gleaming as though it holds sunlight inside. Later, bronze is born, a marriage of tin and copper stronger than either alone. The discovery of metals is more than craft. It is a new kind of listening, hearing what the earth will give if pressed, if scorched, if trusted to reveal. Archaeologists sift slag heaps where fire once roared hotter than cooking required. Furnaces leave blackened pits. Broken molds scatter. Across ground, ornaments of hammered native copper predate smelting by millennia. In Çatalhöyük, beads of malachite and obsidian share the same necklaces. At Lake Superior, ancient miners dug copper with stone hammers, leaving scars in bedrock like long, patient signatures. Each trace speaks of curiosity, of hands unwilling to stop at stone's edge. Metallurgy asks for more than strength. It asks for patience with invisible change, or looks like ordinary rock until fire persuades it otherwise. To build a furnace that burns hotter than open flame, to channel wind with bellows, to test mixtures until one shines. That is experiment written in sweat and smoke. Could intelligence itself be defined by this? The willingness to coax a hidden world into revealing what it can become. Picture a figure crouched by a clay crucible, eyes narrowed against smoke. Inside, copper glows red, then orange, then white. A stick stirs the molten pool. Sparks leap. The smell of metal, sharp, earthy, almost sweet, fills the night. When cooled, it hardens not like stone, but into a form that holds edge and curve with equal grace. A tool is born that bites wood more cleanly, a blade that stays true, a point that pierces deeper. The mind expands with the possibilities gleaming in hand, but metal is not only tool, it is symbol. Gold shines without rust, a sun held in palm. Silver mirrors moonlight, soft and cold. Copper glows like fire cooled to stillness. People wear them not for use but for meaning, for beauty, for power. The gleam becomes a language of status, of ritual, of longing. Intelligence learns here that utility is not its only measure. Symbol and story are as potent as edge. Science explains the properties: conductivity, malleability, alloying. But to early minds, these qualities must have felt like magic, alchemy, before the word existed. Rocks that bleed when heated, dust that shines like stars, fire that changes one substance into another. How could such acts not feel sacred? Temples later guard furnaces. Myths remember smiths as liminal figures, half magician, half laborer. In every culture, the worker of metal stands near mystery. Yet metallurgy also reshapes society. To smelt is to require fuel, labor, or transport. No one person alone controls all steps. Communities grow around mines. Forests fall to feed furnaces. Trade routes stretch for tin and copper. Metal is collective intelligence, a network of tasks, each piece useless without the others. Perhaps the true brilliance lies not in the gleam of bronze itself, but in the collaboration it demands. Imagine lifting a small bronze axe. Its edge catches light even thousands of years later, sharp still to the touch. This tool outlives its maker, perhaps outlives generations of use. In it lies permanence, the promise that labor can stretch across time. With stone, tools are chipped, anew each season. With metal, inheritance becomes possible. Objects become legacy. Memory takes on weight, but metals bring both harvest and shadow. With bronze comes weaponry, blades turned against flesh as often as against forest. With iron, plows deepen furrows, but swords also carve borders. Intelligence is double-edged here. The same smelter who casts a tool can cast a weapon. Is human smartness measured by invention alone, or by the choices of what to shape from what is possible? The earth remains full of hidden veins. Ore waits, silent in stone. Some is tapped, some remains buried. Perhaps other civilizations before might have discovered similar secrets, rising and vanishing without leaving traces we can read. Could metal itself be erased by time, leaving only silence where once furnaces roared? The question lingers. Is the brilliance of metallurgy proof of human genius, or proof of human restlessness? The refusal to accept stone as enough, the desire, always, to uncover what lies deeper. The furnace cools. The slag hardens, and in the quiet, a glint remains, catching firelight like a memory of stars. Silence follows where once there was life. A bird no longer sings. A herd no longer passes. A tree no longer flowers. The earth has known countless extinctions, slow and sudden, local and global, and in each vanishing, humans who notice are changed. To witness absence is to confront fragility, to sense that intelligence does not only measure what exists, but also what has been lost. Paleontologists describe 5 great extinctions. At the end of the Permian, life itself nearly ended. Oceans poisoned, skies darkened. At the close of the Cretaceous, an asteroid struck and the age of dinosaurs gave way to mammals. These stories are written in rock and fossil, in iridium dust, in shocked quartz. Yet humans, though latecomers, have also entered this pattern, not only witnesses, but agents. Mammoths fade from tundra, giant sloths vanish from plains, aurochs fall silent in forests. The rhythm of disappearance quickens where humans tread. Imagine a hunting ground, 10,000 years ago. The herd is vast, but not endless. Spears fly, fires drive, carcasses scatter. For a time, abundance seems eternal. But each season, the herds thin. Children notice, elders wonder, stories change. Perhaps intelligence deepens here, in realizing that choices carry consequence, that what is taken may not return. Awareness of absence may be as powerful a teacher as abundance of presence. The silence of extinction echoes in culture. Myths. Remember vanished beasts as monsters or ancestors. Bones found in caves inspire tales of giants and dragons. In Australia, memories of megafauna may echo in dreamtime stories. In the Mediterranean, elephant skulls may have become cyclopes. In imagination, extinction turns into story, and story into lesson. Intelligence preserves not only what is real, but what is gone. Even today, extinction shapes thought. The dodo, once a bird on Mauritius, now exists only in museums and metaphors. Its image warns of fragility, of arrogance, of carelessness. The great auk, the passenger pigeon, the thylacine, all become mirrors for human choice. In these vanishings, intelligence must face itself, clever enough to hunt, to capture, to expand. But are we wise enough to sustain? Science measures extinction with numbers, species per million years, rates accelerating under human pressure. Conservation biology arises as response, breeding programs, seed banks, sanctuaries. Yet beneath the numbers lies a softer truth. Extinction shapes imagination. The loss of possibility becomes a horizon humans cannot cross. Thought itself becomes aware of limits. Perhaps smartness is not growth without end, but recognition of what must remain if thought is to continue. Picture a cave wall where mammoths are painted in ochre. The lines are alive, the bodies round, the tusks curve. Yet outside the cave, mammoths grow fewer, then none. The art outlives the animal. The wall remembers what the world forgets. Does intelligence cling to memory precisely because life vanishes? Is art a response to extinction, an act of defiance against silence? Extinction is not only loss, it is also transformation. When one form fades, others emerge. Dinosaurs vanish, but birds rise. A forest burns, but shoots return. Intelligence must learn to see continuity within loss, to find pattern even in endings. Perhaps wisdom grows most where grief and hope intertwine. The question lingers. What does vanishing teach the mind? That all is fragile? That care is required? That memory must be tended like a fire lest the silence grow too wide? The earth remains, bearing both life and absence. The silence of extinction speaks as clearly as song, and the human mind, listening, learns. The earth opens its mouth and exhales cool breath. A narrow cleft gives way to corridor, corridor to chamber, chamber to dark, that feels like water holding quiet. Caves gather time in stone the way oceans gather moonlight. Slowly, without hurry, each drop a small decision. Beneath the earth, echoes move like thought, returning questions to the place they were asked. Do caves hold the first philosophies? Ideas, shaped not by argument, but by darkness, by time, by sound, the walls remember. In places where calcite sheets glisten like frozen rain, figures bloom: bison heavy with motion, horses with alert eyes, stags whose antlers branch like winter trees. At Chauvet, charcoal lines 30 and more millennia old still breathe along pale rock. At Lascaux, ochre bodies wheel as if wind could move them. At El Castillo, red discs and hand stencils cloud a chamber wall as if breath could stain stone. The images do not explain, they simply persist. Perhaps thought begins here as a hush shared with animals and light. Underground, the world narrows to touch and sound. Fire flickers on wet surfaces. Smoke threads upward through cracks. A footstep summons an echo that takes its time returning, as if stone were thinking before it speaks. Archaeoacoustics notes how resonant spots coincide with paintings, how a chamber that booms with a low tone often hosts the largest beasts. Someone once learned that voice can call the room to answer, that song can shape a place into companion. Intelligence listens, and the cave replies. Stalagmites climb from floor to ceiling as if earth could grow toward itself. Their tips thicken by years measured in drops. Their layers trap stories of rain in faint tracings of oxygen and carbon, a climate diary kept in limestone. Stalactites descend like teeth of time. A torch raised close shows ancient water shining. Within stone, the mind counts without numbers. Drip, drip, the slow arithmetic of patience. If philosophy asks how to live, perhaps the cave offers one answer in its grammar of accumulation: rise by steady smallness. Bruniquel holds another whisper. Far from daylight, more than 100 millennia beyond remembering, someone broke stalagmites to uniform lengths and built rings upon the cave floor. Their fragments once stood on ceilings. Their bases were blackened by fire. The structure lies well beyond easy light. Neanderthals, the scholars infer, carried and arranged, burned and stayed. For what? Ritual, shelter, signal, school? The rings do not explain themselves. They simply declare that minds once gathered underground with purpose long before modern. Humans drew bison in other caverns. The stone keeps the fact. The meaning remains a question. Darkness changes attention. The eye surrenders its tyranny. The ear grows wide. Drip becomes metronome. Heartbeat becomes drum. Smell sharpens. Bat guano, damp clay, the iron tang of wet rock, the faint sweetness of old smoke when an ember is stirred. Touch becomes guide. The hand reads the wall like script, bumps and grooves becoming sentences of direction. In such, a school, thought slows to the pace of the place. Perhaps wisdom begins when sensory hierarchies rearrange, when seeing steps back and listening steps forward. A hand meets a stone and leaves its own ghost. Palm pressed, pigment blown. Fingers become negative stars in a dark firmament. The wall holds a census of presence. This many hands, this many nights, this many breaths spent making absence visible. The image is both signature and question. Who is here? Who is not? Philosophy, in this unlettered form, appears as relation, self, against world, being against void. The cave also keeps fires. Hearths ringed by stone leaf ash that remembers the last heat. Charcoal, lodged beneath thin veils of calcite, can be dated by the half-life of its light. Layers of mineral above and below give ceilings to time. Uranium-thorium clocks tick slowly in the damp. The laboratory reads their drift and offers years. Science enters softly with instruments and leaves with numbers. The numbers do not silence wonder. They frame it. Imagine a small flame held cupped. On the wall, the flame's shadow dances like a second fire. Horns seem to move. Hooves gather, dust and throw it. Each a painted horse lifts its neck. The illusion arrives without intent to deceive. It arrives because light is restless and stone is uneven and the mind is ready. Did someone once guide the flame to make the animal run? Did song lift as hooves began to move? Philosophy at such a moment is not law. It is breath asking what animates life and finding its answer in the dance between flicker and form. Roots descend from the world above, pale threads, seeking water through cracks. They look like dry lightning or rivers drawn in reverse. Cave hosts these downward trees without leaves, this reminder that surface and depth share one body. Thought, too, has roots that reach into dark, finding what cannot live in light. When a question feels sudden on the tongue, perhaps its root has been growing quietly below for years. Stones fallen from ceilings lie like sleeping animals. Pools mirror a darkness that is not sky. A single drop rings the surface. Circles expand and fade, like ideas tested in silence until they do not break. Bats roost in a warm seam high above. A moth's wing murmurs near an ear. The cave keeps company not with absence, but with subtle life. The lesson is delicate. Emptiness often holds more than presence can show. Philosophy emerges in gestures before it gathers into texts. Choosing a chamber whose echo answers, carrying fire deeper than need, returning to repaint a curve so it becomes more true, tracing hands along the same seam for years until a path polishes. These acts say, return matters, repetition matters, careful difference matters. Intelligence learns ritual not as superstition, but as attention given rhythm. Above ground, storms pass and erase. Below ground, minutes harden into slow. Forever. A footprint in clay can survive where a city cannot. The cave thus values smallness, the crouch, the whisper, the fingertip. If wisdom is humility, perhaps its first shrine is here, where a person becomes smaller than stone and feels relief in that shrinking. A grounding detail lingers like cool on skin. In some decorated caverns, painted chambers sit near acoustic. Sweet spots and red discs bloom near places where a hum returns richest. The correlation is not perfect, but it is enough to suggest intention. The wall is both canvas and instrument. The painter is both maker and listener. The philosophy is both question and echo. Imagine, gently, a person kneeling where drip marks. Star the floor. The torch is set in a crack. Hands are chalked with ochre ground fine as pollen. The first line touches rock. The second line learns from the first. A smudge softens the flank. A contour lifts into presence. No audience waits. The making itself is the answer the night allows. When the flame is pinched out, the animal remains, like a thought left to think itself. And so the question lingers, under the hill like a cool current. Are caves the first rooms where mind meets itself, where the need to ask becomes form, and the form becomes a mirror for the need? Or does the earth merely lend a long memory to what the open air already teaches, giving weatherproof shelter to questions that would otherwise blow away? The invitation is nearly silent. One imagines walking to a threshold of stone at dusk and pausing. Breath slows, ears widen. Without entering, the listener lets the idea of depth gather. A drop falls far within. The echo rises like a patient. Bell. In that sound, the mind sits down. There is nothing to solve. There is only the way darkness holds attention until attention becomes care. Above, stars thread night with frost-white lights. Below, calcite threads centuries in milk-slow curtains. Between them, the human mind learns to be small without vanishing, to speak softly and wait for stone to answer. Morning lays a thin blade of light along the ground, and the world begins to write with shadow. A stick set upright cuts darkness from brightness. Its black finger moves slowly, unhurried as breath. In this simple theater, time acquires a body. The sun advances. The shadow retreats. Noon gathers where the shadow is smallest. Afternoon lengthens like a sigh. Mathematics is already here, hidden in the slope of light, a ratio between height and shade, an angle spoken in silence. The earth turns, and the ground keeps score. What did sundials whisper to the human mind? Long before clocks tick, gnomons stand, posts, obelisks, stones, teaching by absence. In Egypt, shadow clocks and marked courtyards answer the day. In China, a gnomon's noon line helps orient cities to the cardinal winds. In Greece, a scholar compares noon shadows in two far towns and infers the roundness of the world. Eratosthenes reads the earth with two sticks and a summer sun, measuring distance by shade and proportion. Later, in Rome, an obelisk becomes a public pointer, its shadow sliding across pavement cut with lines for months and hours. The lesson quiet but large. The sky leaves a handwriting on the ground, and stone can read. Sundials speak without sound. A face is carved with hour marks. A slanted pin throws a moving letter of darkness that touches one mark, then another, then another. Where the tilt of the pin matches the latitude, the shadow's pace steadies. Where it does not, the dial becomes a local accent of time, particular as a shoreline's curve. Even the sun's imperfection as a clock, a year that wobbles a little because Earth's path is not a perfect circle and its axis leans, leaves a figure in the air, a slow, elegant 8 traced across seasons called an analemma. A patient mind might notice that noon is sometimes early, sometimes late, and hold both truth and tolerance at once. Picture a courtyard of pale stone. In morning, the gnomon's shadow lies long and cool, stretching toward a wall. Dust hangs in the light. Birds lift and settle. As the sun rises, the shadow shrinks, gathering itself like a creature curling to rest. For a brief breath it seems almost to vanish, a dark coin tight at the pole, and then it begins to lengthen the other way. Nothing hurries, nothing stops. A person watching learns that time is not a line to be chased, but a curve to be trusted. A sundial does more than divide a day. It teaches place. At higher latitudes, winter noons are low and shadows mile long. In the tropics, the sun can sit so high that shadows hide under feet. In a few belts of the world, twice each year at noon, a vertical pole casts almost nothing at all. Zenith days when the sun hums overhead and time seems, for a heartbeat, to be purely light. Knowledge of latitude arrives not as numbers first, but as the personality of shadows. This town's noon is stingy, that valley's afternoon stretches like a cat. The earth's geometry becomes a feeling in the body. Inside temples and towers, shadows sharpen into calendars. A slit of light crosses a line on a floor at solstice. A beam climbs a wall through weeks of winter and slides back down toward summer. At noon, in winter, a sun falls into a stone bowl. In spring, it escapes. Builders become choreographers of shadow. A small square in a ceiling admits a blade of day that lands exactly on a carved mark when the year turns. The act is practical, planting, fasting, sailing, but it is also contemplative, a reminder that time itself has architecture. The mathematics inside this mute instrument is tender and deep. The length of the shade tells the sun's height. The angle around the dial tells the hour from noon. The tilt of the gnomon carries the secret of the town's latitude. Words like sine and tangent will come later. For now, a ratio lives in the wrist that sets the pin, in the eye that watches where shadow meets line. The mind feels law before it writes it. A child notices that a shorter stick yields a shorter shadow, but not in simple proportion. Curiosity grows in the small remainder that will someday be an angle. Imagine a sailor bringing a noon mark to life on a deck. Short mast, taut line, chalked circle, so that when the sun is highest, he can know latitude by shade and chart. The ocean rolls. The shadow quivers. Still, a number can be coaxed from this trembling punctuation. The sea, a place that forgets footprints, allows a shadow to speak. Far from stone, a sundial becomes a portable harbor of time. Science places small anchors. The obliquity of Earth, its lean of about 23.5 degrees, tilts seasons. The eccentricity of orbit shifts the sun's apparent speed. The equation of time, that slow annual wobble means sundials and mechanical clocks disagree by minutes unless a chart reconciles them. None of this disturbs the calm of the instrument. Rather, it offers a second lesson. Precision is a conversation, not a command. The sky does not submit. It partners. Poetry answers with its own measures. A shadow is a river of night flowing along, stone. An hour is a petal that turns to face the light. Noon is a held breath. Evening is a long syllable across the yard. The sundial's mottos, later carved in many tongues, warn that only the bright hours are counted, or that the shadow speaks truth, or that time cuts softly while we do other things. A garden dial becomes a philosopher by standing still. What does such a device whisper to a mind? That time is embodied, that place matters, that patience reveals patterns which rush conceals, that the world is readable with almost nothing. One stick, one sun, one attentive gaze. It also suggests that knowledge rests on trust. Trust that the sun will rise. Trust that the ground will keep a mark. Trust that repetition is meaningful. Intelligence learns to wait and to compare. Yesterday's shadow here, today's there. Difference becomes information rather than noise. Consider the shadow's gentler teachings. It never owns the hour. It touches it and moves on. It never lingers to argue. It offers and withdraws. It is faithful enough to guide and variable enough to humble. Perhaps the mind, living with such a teacher, learns an ethic. Know, but loosely. Measure, but kindly. Plan, but leave room for drift. The sundial gives hours without the aggression of alarm. It models a tempo that bodies can bear. Imagine kneeling with a short rod and a string in dry soil. Press the rod upright, tie the string, draw a circle with the string's end. Wait as the shadow creeps toward the circle in morning, touches it, crosses, leaves. Mark the points where it arrives and departs. Bisect the angle and you have north-south, noon's line. Bisect again and you have quarters. A compass appears from patient light. No metal needle, only sky and care. Feel how the world answers when asked softly. A quiet detail persists. In some old towns, midday once sounded when a priest or watcher saw the gnomons' shadow kiss a line, and bells carried that kiss through streets. Elevation changed the moment slightly for each ear, but the city breathed as one chest. Time was local, flavored by hill and steeple and cloud. The mechanical clock, when it came, brought unity and speed. It did not erase the dial's wisdom, but it drowned its voice. Still, in gardens and walls, shadows go on writing. What does this do to thought? It lengthens it. The horizon no longer ends at the body's edge or the season's harvest. Plans stretch to include the past, what must be kept, what must be atoned for, and the future, who will remember us, and how. Law grows under such skies. Oaths invoke witnesses who cannot be bribed. Misdeeds tremble under the gaze of eyes painted on plastered skulls. Even for those who trust only earth and air, a grave keeps a community honest to itself. A place returns the favor of care by requiring care. He looks to Sung here again, to the hours upon hours of hands threading ivory with tenderness that never. He expects thanks. Those beads are a ledger of attention. Each one is a day or a week of work. To bury such labor is to say that value is not only for the living to spend. Intelligence here weighs time differently, not only as cost and benefit, but as offering. Memory lives in pathways as much as in pages. To visit a grave is to rehearse a story by walking. To carry a small stone up a hill and place it on a larger stone is to stitch a line between breaths. Pilgrimage and mourning share bones. Paths grow smooth where feet return. Grasses part. Larks learn tourists of sorrow. Weather polishes inscriptions until the words are almost sunlight. Stone and sky and silence conspire to make recollection physical. Science adds its own anchors to this tender drift. Stable isotopes in teeth tie a buried child to a birthplace far from where she lies. DNA unspools kinship that oral memory forgot. Pollen in the sinuses tells of last season's breathed. Microstratigraphy unpicks the layers of a grave's filling. Event upon event, pause upon pause. Even debate itself, about flower pollen moved by rodents, about disturbed layers, honors the dead by refusing easy story. Intelligence is careful around silence. It tests without cruelty. He imagines a small figurine placed in a hollow near the bed where the dead rest under a house floor, as at Çatalhöyük. Each night the living sleep above the past. Each morning they cook over it, argue over it, laugh, and weep over it. The home is a layered instrument, present on top, past beneath, future walking in and out of the door with muddy feet. Children grow inside this cord. Their intelligence harmonizes with it. They learn the size of belonging by floors that hide bones they never met. There is risk, too. Ancestors can guard or they can bind. A clan can keep wisdom or freeze cruelty. In amber, a debt to the dead can anchor gratitude or enforce fear. The same stone that steadies can also weigh. Intelligence must learn to balance reverence and revision, to keep what is kind, to release what harms, to let the conversation with silence remain a conversation, not a script. What if the impulse to bury is itself the beginning of science? The discipline of leaving evidence in an orderly way, of refusing to let time scramble everything, of making the future a collaborator. A grave is a curated layer, a statement to readers not yet born. This mattered, we arranged it, you will notice. Archaeology is simply the acceptance of that invitation, performed with brushes and patience and restraint. The dead, then, become teachers not by intention alone, but by the humility of those who visit. He traces a spiral on a stone with a damp fingertip, a small shell pattern that will fade in minutes. It is not for permanence, only for this breath. Perhaps graves are the opposite, stones drawn for centuries. Between the two, the quick spiral and the long cairn, the mind learns the full spectrum of time, the value of what vanishes and the value of what remains. Intelligence is the ability to love both kinds. The sky vaults above the hill. Gulls stitch. White loops along the ocean's gray. A late bee finds thistle and works it as if winter were not approaching. He feels the world hold both endings and continuings with ease. Humans needed to practice that ease, and graves are where the practice became form. The speculative question rises like mist over grass. Did the habit of speaking with the dead give birth to the future? Did graves teach calendars? Did offerings teach surplus? Did ancestor names teach grammar for time? Or was it the other way, that people who could already think long made graves as a kind of exhale? He lets both stand, like two stones that do not lean, each true enough to steady a walker. The invitation is simple. He imagines placing a small bead, shell, bone, glass, it does not matter, on a low stone at the edge of a field. He steps back and watches light move along it as clouds pass. He says nothing. He listens for the way silence changes when attention arrives. In that change, he feels intelligence lengthen, become gentler, become more faithful. Stone keeps the cool of morning. The ocean lays its bright line and withdraws. The sky opens like a quiet book, Between them, humans arrange time with their hands, speaking carefully to what does not answer, and in that patient conversation, the mind becomes wide. A thin wind combs the ridge where grass leans like script. Below, the ocean draws its long, bright line. Above, the sky rests open like a page that has been turned and still waits. He listens to the large silence, and senses smaller silences nested within. Gaps between stars, gaps between pulses on a receiver, gaps between generations. Intelligence, perhaps, is the art of putting something meaningful into these silences without demanding an answer. He remembers bottles thrown into water. Not glass, but copper and gold and radio. In one age, a great dish in the tropics lifts its ear and then its voice. A coded burst leaves the bowl and flies outward. A picture made of prime numbers sent in 1974 toward a cluster whose stars will have drifted elsewhere by the time any reply could arrive. In another age, two small plaques ride out on gravities. Slope, their line drawings plain and tender. A hand raised in greeting. A map made of pulsars. A hydrogen atom flashing like a tiny metronome. Later, two records whirl in a cold wind beyond the last planet, etched with birds and rain and whale, and the word hello again and again. These are not boasts. They are small lanterns hung at the edge of a campsite no one may ever reach. The ocean of night carries them as it carries everything else, patiently, without comment. On certain summer evenings long ago, a narrow signal appears in the static at a radio telescope in Ohio, a shout so clean that the volunteer circling it with a pen writes a single astonished word in the margin. It does not repeat. Years pass, dishes grow, algorithms learn to sift sizzle from song, interference thickens from our own machines. The sky remains largely quiet. The paradox arrives like a wry smile. If minds are common, where is everyone? If rare, why are we here at all? He lets the questions sit like stones warmed by sun. Not obstacles, but places to rest the gaze. Messages are not only for far strangers. Some are for close descendants who will not share a language. Beneath a northern forest and a pebbled sea, men carve corridors into bedrock and tuck away a century's bright wastes with a promise that the earth will not be troubled by them for 100,000 years. Engineers and poets meet to ask a strange question. How do you warn a people who do not yet exist? Not to dig where you have hidden danger. Spikes of black stone arranged in fields like teeth? Cats bred to glow in the presence of hazard, remembered. In song? A universal emblem for harm? The answers smile and fade. In the end, depth and geology carry more meaning than symbols ever could. Stone becomes teacher again. He thinks of other long shelves made against forgetting. On a cold island where the wind sings vowels, seeds sleep in labeled rows, an ark of grain and fruit waiting for hands that may not have been born yet. On a mountain of desert, a clock stirs slowly toward its first tick in a span that would blur a dynasty into morning light. On small nickel discs, etched with microscript, thousands of tongues fold into circles of metal, the grammar of human breath condensed into a talisman. Language, food, caution, time. The four corners of an offering to the future. Closer to flesh, the quieter library forms. Letters of A, T, C, G can carry stories as well as genes. Researchers teach strands to hold poems and pictures and code inside their elegant sugar spines, then read them back with light. A book can hide inside a bacterium. A picture can ride in yeast. The density of meaning per gram is oceanic. Yet the lesson he draws is not triumph. It is humility. Information wants many homes. Clay and shell, stone and fiber, tape and silicon, seed and song, no single house can keep the weather out forever. Intelligence, if it is kind, distributes itself the way mycelium threads soil, redundantly, quietly, in many tongues. Grounding returns like small cairns along a trail. Arecibo's coded burst points toward M13. The Pioneer plaques and Voyager records leave the sun on trajectories no shepherd will recall. A radio, wow, once pleats the static and disappears. A repository under Finnish rock plans for 100. The millennia. A vault in Svalbard cools the sleep of barley and bean. Long disk projects micro-etch language. Experiments in DNA storage show that letters can live in cells. Each fact is a lamp set at dusk so the path does not vanish. He watches moonlight touch a stone where Lacan writes slow green sentences. If the planet were a test, what would it ask? Not whether minds can fly or split atoms, for birds and stars have shown the first and the second wants no help. Perhaps. The test is simpler, more difficult. Can a species learn to keep its own flame and the forest's shade at once? Can it speak to its dead without chaining the living? Speak to its unborn without binding their wrists? Speak to its neighbors without owning their breath? Intelligence without this grammar is only cleverness, quick and bright and gone like a spark in wind. He imagines another mind arriving here long after cities have become silt, reading the chemistry of a thin clay where carbon leans light and ash beads glitter faintly, and asking the same questions we ask of older layers. Was this breath volcanic, or was it a tool? Were there singers who kept seed, builders who kept water, storytellers who kept kindness? Our record, if honest, will be a mixture: plastic sand and rescued grain, carbon altered and rivers healed, warnings buried and songs carried. The future reader will infer an argument inside our days. Ethics steps in like tide over a flat. It flows around ankles, cool and steady, asking for no performance. Messages to the future are not only technical, they are tonal. A plaque can boast, a record can invite, a vault can hoard, a clock can preach. The better messages feel like gifts, left on a doorstep. Water set out for a traveler at night, bread wrapped in cloth, a note that says welcome. Be careful here. He does not decide for all. He decides only for the mind in his chest, and that decision is to choose invitations over monuments. He takes a small shard of clay and presses the pad of his thumb into it, then lifts the clay to the wind so it can taste air before it hardens. The print is not a claim of importance. It is a texture that a future hand might recognize as kin. If the shard survives, it will say nothing more profound than this: someone once sat here and thought of someone later. Perhaps that is the root of human brightness, to allow the present to be widened by care for the absent. The ocean answers with patient metaphor. A message in a bottle does not steer. It drifts and arrives where it is permitted by current and rock. Yet bottles that are many and set loose from many shores have a way of reaching more beaches. He sees our species as a shoreline lined with senders. Some launch law, some send songs, some toss equations and harvest instructions and maps that show where not to step. None know which bay will receive which bottle. All trust the practice. Anyway, stone contributes its own counsel. In the oldest places where petroglyphs survive the erasures of rain, even simple marks, the ladder, the spiral, the hand, remain legible because they refuse fashion. They are elemental and kind. He takes this as design advice. Speak in the grammar of sky and river, of hunger and warmth, of caution and gratitude. Draw a cup when you mean water. Draw a wound when you mean danger. Draw a seed and a hand and a bowl when you mean we were careful. The speculative question casts a soft shadow. If Earth were designed, or simply lucky, to host minds, does the luck continue only if those minds learn to tend? If the world were a test, would the passing grade be measured in signals heard across light years, or in rivers that still remember fish, soils that still remember roots, skies that still trust? Their own blue? He does not press. He lets the question stand with the light on it. He invites a small imagining. A plain table holds 4 objects: a seed wrapped in paper, a shard of fired clay with a thumbprint, a sheet etched with 50 languages saying we tried to be kind, a small mirror. He imagines someone much later opening the package, planting the seed, holding the shard, reading the words slowly, lifting the mirror and seeing a face that is not his and yet is. No instruction follows. The message is the posture itself. Care for what grows, remember what hands can do, share speech, and look at yourself with mercy. Night lengthens. The ocean keeps its luminous seam, untied and true. The sky receives every message and reflects none back, which is its way of encouraging patience. Stone cools and keeps counsel. Between them, the human mind practices a long, gentle audacity, to address the absent with kindness, to leave bottles on many tides, to listen for answers without demanding them, to live as if being good ancestors were the only exam that matters. Night holds. The room like water holds a stone. Breath slows. Small sounds thin to a hush. The window is a soft square. Beyond it, sky rests with its faint scatter of fire. He lies still. The ocean in his chest lifts and lowers, a tide that asks nothing. Stone keeps the day's warmth and lets it go. The floor cools. The air settles. Thought loosens its grip and drifts like a leaf upon a pond. Somewhere far away, waves fold themselves into lace along a shore that does not need a name. Somewhere higher, a slow star glides behind a lighter cloud. The world continues its quiet arithmetic without hurry. He listens, not to understand, only to feel the shape of the listening. A small truth remains, simple as breath. Rest has its own wisdom. He allows it to arrive the way dusk arrives, by degrees, by gentleness, without announcement. If a question lingers, it is soft and round, no edge to trouble the night. What does the sky dream when it closes its bright eyes? What does the ocean remember when it forgets to speak? What does stone think of? While cooling, he does not chase answers. He lets images float and dim. A line of foam, a bowl of light, a hand on a cool wall. Imagine the body as a shoreline. With each exhale, the tide slips from sand. With each inhale, it returns. Hold nothing. Keep only the rhythm. Clouds move without urgency. Stars keep their patient distance. The dark grows kind. Breath in. Breath out. He rests in the place where sky, ocean, and stone are only other words for silence. The room becomes wider than its walls. Time becomes slower than a clock. Sleep stands just beyond the door, already open.